All right, we will jump in here. Welcome everyone to OrthoFI's Business Management Masterclass. My name is Brian Lewis. I'm the Director of Marketing here at OrthoFI. I'm really excited to have everybody here with us tonight. We got over 400 people with us this evening registered, and we're really excited that you're able to join us. First and foremost, I'd really like to say hello and thank you to all of our OrthoFI clients that are here with us this evening. Together, we've helped more than 500,000 patients start smiling by accessing high quality, affordable orthodontic treatment. And we're grateful to have you as our partners as we continue pursuing our goal of starting over 1 million smiles per year. I'd also like to welcome all of our non-OrthoFI practices that are here with us tonight as well. We know everyone's schedules are busy and time is valuable. So thank you for spending your evening here with us tonight. If you are not an OrthoFI client, no problem. We're actually very excited. Now's never been a better time to learn more about us and how we can help your practice. We're actually running a lot of great promos right now, a lot of great new client specials. So, we'd love to have an opportunity to chat with you. And if you schedule a live personalized demo with us before next Friday, you'll be entered for a chance to win a $500 Amazon gift card. So great time for the holidays. And like I said, whether you feel like it's right for your practice or not, we guarantee that you'll find a time well spent just spending some time with our team, learning about some of the latest industry trends and conversion data from more than 900,000 patient consults, and how our patient acquisition suite and powerful tools and software and full service revenue cycle management system can really help your practice achieve some really great things in 2021 and achieve some double-digit growth, as well as 2 times higher same-day conversion rates versus the industry average. So if you'd like to schedule a demo, you can visit us online and learn more about us at startmoresmiles.com. I also want to hit a few quick housekeeping items. First and foremost, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. We're going to be compiling all of our questions use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. We have a couple people from our team, as well as our presenters that are here with us tonight, that are going to be helping answer those questions in real time. Some of the ones that are a little bit easier and quicker to reply to. And then we're also going to compile all of them to help lead us in the Q&A session with Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Kozlowski at the end of the presentation. So engage, get involved with us and answer, and feel free to type any questions. And before we kick things off here, we'd like to do something to kind of engage with everybody. And so I'm going to post a quick poll question that we'd love for everybody to answer. It's just a few quick questions. The purpose of this is really to, like I said, get everybody engaged with us tonight, learn a little bit more about your practices, what your goals are heading into 2021, as well as get everybody thinking about what types of things might get in the way of achieving those goals. So we'll just take a couple seconds here and let everybody take some time to answer some of the poll questions that pop up on your screen. It's just 3 quick questions that we'd love for you to answer if you could. So, and then with that, I'll leave it up here for a minute before we get started, and we'll kick those off. Our speakers tonight, like I said, we know everybody is really busy, and our presenters have really done a great job to put together a presentation for you that we really think you'll get a lot out of. Everything from leadership to creating same-day start culture in your practice to really running your business as really a business owner and doing all the things that you can do to be successful. Both of these presenters are renowned in the industry for not only their clinical efficiency and their treatment results, but really their expertise in practice building and financial management. Leading us off tonight is Dr. Jamie Reynolds of Swain & Reynolds Orthodontics. Dr. Reynolds earned his degree from the University of Michigan and his MS in orthodontics from the University of Detroit Mercy. He's an ABO diplomat and the first orthodontist to include an insignia case in his ABO recertification examination. He's authored a number of articles and lectures, both nationally and internationally, on passive self-ligation in the Damon system, advanced orthodontic technologies, soft tissue lasers and aligners, and he's also one of the co-founders of OrthoFI and now serves as our board chairman. So thank you for answering these poll questions. I'm going to turn the poll off. We'll use this as some of the questions kind of to lead some of the discussion at the end. So appreciate everybody answering those. And we will kick those off a little bit later. But with that, I am beyond happy and thankful. Again, happy everybody's here. So thankful for being with us. And I am honored to welcome Dr. Jamie Reynolds. So I hope you enjoy, and we will get a lot out of this.
Happy Thursday, or whatever night it is to all you out there watching. Welcome to Koz and my business masterclass. So Koz and I, for a couple of years, has been doing a full day masterclass, and our intention was to do a day and a half masterclass in 2021, but current global circumstances have kind of gotten in the way of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick this off, and we're going to do our day-long course that we normally do. And we're going to do it in webinar format, which is great. And so today will be part one. Koz and I together will form part one. And then we'll also be doing another class in the first quarter of 2021. That'll be another 3-hour class. It'll be kind of part two, and that'll be our day-long course in webinar format. So if any of you have ever been to it, we throw a whole bunch of information at you. We're going to do the same thing here. And what I'm going to kick off with is I'm going to be talking more about same-day starts, and Koz will be talking about culture and efficiency. And so the way that I'm going to start it with is less about the recipe, hey, do this and then do that, and then third step to this, and then have your PC this for same-day starts. We'll get to that in the next class. What I'm going to talk about this evening is more of the mindset behind the things necessary for the change management and the understanding of why same-day starts are important. And that's really the foundation to build everything else on as you move forward and implement or become better at same-day starts in your office. So we will be talking some numbers from OrthoFI. For those of you that aren't really aware, OrthoFI is a software and who's also sponsoring this these webinar series. And for full disclosure, Koz and I are the co-founders of OrthoFI, along with Dave Turner and a bunch of other people, and we also have stock in OrthoFI as a full disclosure. But through the system, it's a software system that processes patients through the sales process, and the numbers that we're showing, you know, are robust. Through the years, we processed over almost $2.5 billion of revenue through the system, over 500,000 starts, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of accounts receivable, with very high collections and insurance rates. So as we go through some of the numbers for this, it's not numbers that we pulled out of thin air. There's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue that's gone through that we've been able to analyze the data from. So for anyone with enough gray hairs that I used to spend most of my time talking about clinical treatment. That's really my passion. I know that I've sort of been talking a lot about business stuff lately, more so because I've gotten access to some of the aggregate data, and I'm really interested in helping orthodontic patients wind up in orthodontic offices. But my real passion was clinical treatment, is clinical treatment. So I still practice seeing clinical patients. In fact, I did so today. And this is one of my patients. One of the big thrills in my life is when Ormco asked me, after doing some of the clinical trials for Insignia, to use some of my patients on the cover of one of their advertising for their Insignia campaign. And you know, it's a really amazing profession that we have. And I spent the first 10 years of my career exclusively focused on how to become a better clinician, and really all the details that go into both understanding where you should put a smile to how to get there. You know, that was my obsession for 10 years. And I thought in earnest that if I could just become that, you know, a little bit better orthodontist, get that little bit more mesiobuccal cusp where it's supposed to go, or the marginal ridge where it should be, then that's all I needed to do to drive the business results I was looking for too. Because frankly, I didn't just want to be, you know, a great clinician. I also want to have a great business and have great success. And so I really wanted to have all the things that go along with success in professional health career and in the business side of things. And as I began to understand, becoming an incrementally better orthodontist does not incrementally improve your business. In fact, our customers really don't understand most of the things that we care about to make the orthodontic side of business better. So it really wasn't about becoming an incrementally better clinician, although that's what we all need to strive to do. We should be the gold standard. But it's also learning about the business principles that go along with running an excellent business with high integrity at the same time. So it really made me realize that healthcare was changing, the business was becoming more important. In order for the patients to wind up where they should be, which is in the hands of skilled clinicians, we have to be better at business. You know, things are changing, especially now, right? So we have DTC ortho, big group practices, consolidation is on. We have COVID and all the things that are associated with that, both from a healthcare perspective and a political perspective, and an HR perspective. How do we handle all the things that are going on in our practice? How do we manage our team members if they're symptomatic, if they're partially symptomatic? How do we manage all of that? All the political and social things, buildings literally have been burning over the last month. You know, unemployment, who knows what's going to happen with that? I can't even really tell you what's going on with unemployment at this point. And whatever else is coming down the path that we don't know is out there. And it's enough to make you want to put your head in the sand and kind of forget that things are going on. And wake me up in 2021, which we're almost there, thankfully. Now, on the flip side, you know, from a positive news standpoint, Invisalign did a study a few years ago, and what it shows is of the 300 million people in the United States, only 2 to 3 million are treated annually, which means, you know, 74% need treatment, which means that even if we 10x the amount of people in the United States that get orthodontic treatment every year, we multiplied our market times 10, which if you can imagine all of our businesses going by 10 times or 5 times or even double the amount of business that we would have, you know, we could multiply the market by 10 times and still only be treating 10% of the people that could be treated on an annual basis. And Chris Benson is one of the smartest guys out there, shared this data a couple of years ago, that the search for the word orthodontics grew 100% year over year from 2016 to 17. So more people, in fact, twice as many people are looking for the word orthodontics in 17 as in 16. And I'm sure once we get some more updated numbers, it continues to grow. So just because there's more competition out there also means, doesn't mean that there's less patients available. In fact, there's more patients available, a lot more patients available. And the question is which way is the pie going to be distributed? And then also some interesting numbers from COVID. You know, the personal savings is at an all-time high. It spiked. You know, there's only so many gummy bears you can buy in quarantine, apparently. The rest of people have been saving. And then, you know, some information that we have from OrthoFI. You know, the blue line shows the V-shaped recovery in patient starts. And so what we're seeing, we talked about the different types of recoveries we could have economically. And I don't know that we're out of the woods yet. You know, we may have a turbulent next few months until, you know, we get to springtime and whatever happens with the vaccine and everything else. But, you know, from a starts perspective, we had a green, or this blue line shows that V-shaped recovery, and we're hoping for a green line of starts performance next year across the data that we're showing. So all is not lost. Although, you know, it seems like lots have been changing. We can make fun of it. What do we do? And so, you know, Darwin said, it's not the strongest species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And I think in turbulent times, now more than any time I can remember, things are changing and we have to be responsive. And I think in our particular circumstance, you know, we have to do both grasping some of the things from a virtual and infection control and a marketing of infection control standpoint, and also grasping the fundamentals of business and understanding, the mindset of a leader and the business fundamentals that are responsible for success. And we got to make sure that, as football players would say, we focus on the blocking and tackling. So you can have the greatest quarterback in the world who can throw the best passes, but unless you have blocking, the quarterback gets tackled before they can get the ball off. And so we need to focus on the fundamentals to move forward. This is a great book, and I'm going to share a lot of books that have been helpful for me over the years. It's called The 12-Week Year. It's written by a guy named Brian P. Moran. It's actually a Michigan State alum, which the Michigan guy in me doesn't like, but it's a great book, and he's a super sharp guy. And it talks about it's not what you know or even who you know, it's what you implement that counts. And it teaches you how to do a business plan. Most orthodontists don't know how to do a business plan, what a business plan is, never have done a business plan, and they show up every day thinking about goals that they want, but they don't ever put a plan in place to achieve those goals. The expression, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So this is a great book to kind of start from the business planning. Dave Turner, the CEO of OrthoFI, and I have both used the same business coach over the years. His name is Fadi Baradahi. In fact, Dr. Fadi Baradahi has a PhD in business. I can tell you that both OrthoFI and me personally wouldn't share the same success that we have nearly without Dr. Fadi. So anybody looking for a business coach out there, I have no financial or any other relationship with Dr. Fadi other than gratitude. So he's helped me a lot, and he's a good resource for any of you looking for a business coach. He coaches quite a few orthodontists and many other people in business around the country. So when we get down to the basics, we want to talk about the three functions of a business. So if we were in the lecture format, I would ask people what the three functions of a business are. And so the first one is what we call operations. So the person in charge of operations in a business is your COO, your Chief Operations Officer. And so what operations are is creation of goods and services that deliver value to the customer. So it's the building of the widget, it's the creating of the consulting information that you use to run your business, or the straightening of the teeth. The second component is marketing. So marketing is the promotion or the selling of those goods and services. So it not only includes the advertising, but it also includes the sales. And then the third component is finance, which is the management and the study of money, because in order to make stuff and to market stuff, you have to sell stuff and get paid, and then you have to manage your money the correct way so that the business keeps in operation and the flywheel spins. And so we know so little about business that if I ask most orthodontists what the three functions of a business are, many of us might not get all of these things correct, and this is something that you learn on day one of business school. Yet we're all expected to run our small businesses. So when you think about the marketing perspective or how you're going to position yourself out there, there's 4 different ways that you can position your practice from a practice strategy standpoint. So again, if we were raising hands, what is one way that you could position your practice? The first way that typically comes to mind for people is price. So if you have a new competitor come to town, the first thing they may do, the young doctor that opens up in town, they may undercut your price, and they may also, you may be concerned about that. Many of us let the dollars and cents of things get squarely in our head, and we assume that people will only come to us based on the price. And if you're doing a low price, high volume practice, that may in fact be true. But there are other ways that can get you, your practice to position other than price. The next one is product. So if you ever go to the AAO and you walk into the vendor pavilion, that's how we're marketed to. So we're marketed on by product. So invisible aligners this, self-ligating braces that. We're marketed to mostly from a product perspective. So then a lot of times in our offices, we'll turn around and market back to our consumers the way that we're marketed to from a product perspective. So I do invisible this or braces that. And so that's product marketing. The third thing is niche marketing. So the small things that you can do to create a little niche for yourself. So maybe you're specialized in surgical orthodontics, or maybe you're sleep apnea or TMJ or extraction or non-extraction, whatever that niche is. You can market yourself inside of a smaller arena that other people don't play in, and you can attract customers in that way. And the fourth way is service. And so customer service, the way you treat your customers, in our case, the way you treat your patients and their parents. And this is the realm that provides the most price elasticity. And so the higher positioning that you have with service, the more you can charge. And there's really three different types of service. There's non-compliant service, there's compliant service, and then there's anticipatory service. And so if you think about non-compliant service, we all do this. We know that people would like to get their braces off typically after school, but it's hard to take braces off after school because it's a longer appointment, so we have people come in the morning. So non-compliant service would be like, hi, Johnny's ready to get his braces off, so I'd like to schedule his appointment. Can I get an after-school appointment? And the scheduling coordinator says, nope. So that's your non-compliant service. You know what they want, you don't give it to them. Compliant service might be, yep, we do offer that, and let me schedule it at a time of your convenience. And if you figured out how to put all your bondings and debondings in the afternoon and have the rest of your clients happy, then you let me know. I'd love to hear that trick. And the third type of service is anticipatory service. So maybe some of you have been on a tropical vacation before and you've gone down to the Caribbean. We like to do that sometimes with our kids, and we come from Michigan. So we have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to pile our kids onto the car to get to the airport, to connect in Atlanta, to make it somewhere in the Caribbean. And by the time we get there, we are tired, we're hot because we have all of our cold weather clothing on from Michigan. We've been crammed into the plane. And when we get to the hotel, the first thing they do is they take our bags and then they hand you a ice cold adult beverage, which is the best tasting beverage of all time. There's never been a beverage that tastes any better. And they know that's exactly what you need. They're anticipating that. You don't have to ask for it, and they deliver that to you when they know that you need it. So that's anticipatory service. So if you're thinking about really wowing your customers, start to think about how you can anticipate what they need and then provide it to them in advance. Do you wait for them to get coffee, or do you offer to them chocolate chip cookies? Are they hot and ready and smelling good when patients arrive in the morning? Or in the afternoon, are there other things that you can do, in your practice that can be nicely anticipated? Many offices have massage chairs because they know that parents are stressed. They get very few moments to themselves, but gosh, would it be nice for them to sit down and get a massage where the patients are in the back. So, and one note about price is that I would say, we're not selling gallons of milk in orthodontics, so we're not competing exclusively on price. We also are competing on affordability, and that definitely is the more important component of price, especially when you're selling a high dollar service like orthodontics. So not only are you thinking about price, but I would offer, and we'll back this up with data later, that affordability is the more important aspect of price. So from a customer service standpoint, there's an interesting study by Bain and Company, which is a big consulting group, that 80% of companies say that they deliver superior service, and the actually more interesting part about that is that only 8% of customers agree. So 80% of people say that they give great service, but only 8% of customers agree. Now, most of us in orthodontics don't poll our customers or survey our customers, and so I think it's worthwhile to look yourself in the mirror and maybe start to have some conversations with your customers about, are you providing the service that you think that you are? Now, this guy, his name is Dan Gilbert, famous guy locally here in Detroit. He started Quicken Loans. He's owns the Cleveland Cavaliers, worth many billions of dollars. Has done a lot to renovate downtown Detroit, and he was interviewed for a blog podcast, and he had this great quote I like. It says, "Numbers and money follow; they do not lead." I tell our team when we're talking about things that money's faster than you, so don't try to catch it. What it basically means is, the old saying, the reason that person has money is because all they care about is money. Maybe it used to be true, unlikely, but it's not true anymore. If all you're doing is caring about money and not your customers, then if you do wind up catching money, you won't have it for very long. And so you need to deliver value to your customers, and you need to give great service to your customers, and the money will follow. If you put money first, then you won't wind up getting it. I think it's a really insightful quote, maybe the most important slide I'll show today. And I think about talking about sales or marketing. I think as doctors, we hate the word sales, we hate the word marketing, and we're hands off when we talk about marketing or sales. And the first thing that doctors say, well, I'd like to do better at sales, but I hate being pushy. And so, and that's the first thing that I said when I had one of the first people try to help me in our sales process. And I said, well, I don't want to be pushy. And so what this person, a guy named Wayne Pearson, a really bright guy, told me was, elite sales talent means you're not being pushy or high pressure. And so the best salespeople, the ones that have the best results, are the ones that sell the most, but aren't pushy. And so if you hear the word pushy as you're trying to improve your sales process, which you undoubtedly will because there's a learning curve to it, you're not doing it the right way. And so, in fact, requisite of elite sales talents is to not be pushy and to not be pressured. But you do have to manage to a number. And so Peter Drucker, who is maybe one of the more famous business consultants of all time, you can't measure or manage what you don't measure. And so you need to take some of the subjectivity out of what you're doing and apply objective measurement numbers to what you're doing. So you can look at it and you can measure apples to apples from a numbers performance basis. And so as we get into some today and some other lecture stuff next time, we'll dive into some key performance indicators or key numbers that you want to look at and how those can help you understand what's going on in your business and how you can react to those. And so if we think about some of the numbers that you measure from sales performance, the historical measurement, the one we've used for the last 20 years in orthodontics, is called case acceptance, and that's basically the number of starts divided by the number of new patient exams. And while in big data sets over a long range of time, I think this is a directionally accurate number. It's a pretty blunt number, and it really offers you very little information about short-term stuff. So if you make a change in your fee structure, do you know if it's working? If you hire a new TC, how do you know if it's working? If you run a promotion, how do you know if it's working? If you have a new practice where you don't have much recall program, how do you know if it's working? If you have an established practice, are your new patients performing the same as your recall patients? All those things you can't see with this number. So my suggestion is that there's a better number at this point, one that we call treatment recommended conversion, or TRC. So what that is the number of starts divided by the number of recommends. So if I recommend treatment, does the patient start? Yes or no? Case acceptance doesn't take into consideration whether you've actually recommended treatment or not. It's just starts divided by exams. TRC looks at starts divided by recommend. So if I recommend phase 1, did they start? If I recommend new treatment, did they start? If I recommend re-exams, did they start? And then if I didn't recommend treatment, either because they didn't need it or they needed it to go into the recall program and come back later, it doesn't count that against you. So it's a really exact metric that you can measure on an hourly, daily, weekly, monthly basis that tells you exactly what's going on in the sales performance of your business. So it is really the true scoreboard of how you and your treatment coordinators are performing in sales. And so one of the things that orthodontists like is golf, many of us. I am not a good golfer, but I enjoy it from time to time. And when you go to cocktail parties, people start talking about case acceptance. Everyone says they have 80% yes. Oh, what's your case acceptance? And the answer is 80% or higher all the time. And we know from measuring things in OrthoFI over the year, over 300 or 400 practices, that most people, when they start, are closer to 50% or below. And even though they say that they're higher, and it reminds me of the same people, the way they play golf with foot wedges and mulligans and do-overs. And so a lot of times when people turn on OrthoFI, they'll complain that it's ruined their case acceptance, when in fact it's actually just made you look at your true case acceptance for the first time without all the mulligans and foot wedges that you've been applying along the way. And so cheating in conversion percentage only hurts you and your bank account. So I would suggest that you start looking at the numbers authentically as soon as possible and looking at your own conversion percentage. And that's a very first start of how you can improve. So, why, people have been talking about same-day starts for quite a few years now. I'm not sure who started, maybe Dana Fender or Ben Burris or one of those people that you hear talking about it a lot. But whoever it was a sharp person, because more than being a great sales tool, it's an incredible convenience for our patients. And we know, especially with all the virtual things and, shopping delivery to your door, and the world many businesses are making a lot of money and having a lot of happy customers by becoming more convenient. And this is a way that we can be convenient for our customers. If you're going to make them come back 3 or 4 times to have the exam and then take some models and come back for separators and come back for a consultation, it's wasting an incredible amount of people's time. And, clinical orthodontics is super important to me. If you don't believe that you can do a great job diagnosis and treatment planning without, spending a week or 2 looking at models and tracing steps, I would suggest to become better. It is possible to do it. In fact, many of the country's finest clinicians do mostly same-day starts, and they're able to diagnose and treatment plan their case on the spot. Many of them are also using 3D imaging on every patient, which allows you to get more detailed diagnosis, and also just focusing on the patient's time. So convenience is really critical, and to think that you cannot do an appropriate diagnosis the same day for that patient, I think there's some continuing education that can teach you how to do that. That's outside the scope of this course. And so when we think about, if we define a same-day start, when patient comes in on the day of the exam, and then you recommend treatment, and then they sign the contract, and then they get their braces on, that's the same-day start. And if we look at the conversion percentage for that, your TRC, it's 100%, pretty simple. So the next thing is this, what we call a same-day contract. So the patient comes in for the exam, you recommend treatment, they sign the contract, make their down payment, but they don't come back to get their treatment started until later. So this is either someone who signs and comes back later to get their braces on, or an aligner start, or an indirect bond, or whatever those are. And so the conversion percentage for that is just under 99%, right? So the idea that, people kind of run away if they don't get the braces on that day is not true. And so same-day starts or same-day contract, the signing of the contract and getting the down payment that day is the key part. There are a few that cancel before they get treatment, but not many. So if they don't make their down payment that day, the next thing would be a scheduled start. And so the patient comes in for the exam, you recommend treatment, they don't sign the contract, but they do make the appointment to get the braces on, okay? And the conversion percentage for that is 80%. It drops by 20% by not getting that contract signed. But the smart treatment coordinator, if they're not going to sign the contract that day, would say, okay, well, while you're here, I know you're busy, let's find a convenient time for you to come back and get started with everything so we can put that on the books so you have it. And so that commitment there, as we'll talk about a little bit later, increases the odds that they're going to start, but not as much as getting the contract that day. And then if you come in, you recommend treatment, you don't sign the contract, and you don't schedule that start, they walk out the door, they want to talk to dad, whatever the case may be, the likelihood of the patient starting treatment drops to below 50%. So many of the process for a treatment coordinator would be, hey, let's get you started. No, I want to go talk to dad. And then they say, okay, great. Talk to dad and then give me a call, right? And so if that's your process, not even offering to get them scheduled, not even offering to get the paperwork out of the way that day and to sign the contract, your conversion percentage is going to be around 50%, which is the way most people do it, which is why the national average is that way. And so if we look at from a demand curve, the vertical axis is conversion percentage, and the horizontal axis is the amount of days from recommend. You can see that the curve drops very steep from when they come in for the exam and to the further out it goes. So, excuse me, the moment they leave the office, your conversion erodes, and then the orange line is adults and the blue line is kids. And the further it goes away from treatment, the less likely they are to start. So it's a very busy world. People have a lot of things on their plate. And so there's a million other things. I think we all ultimately default that if they don't get started in treatment with us, they automatically go to our competitor. But they also may decide to go to Disney World or get Botox or save the money for college expenses or put the money in the bank or who knows what else they'll do with it. So, but there's a lot of different choices for the consumer's money. And so in order to capitalize on that, the statistics show the sooner we can capitalize on it, the more likely they are to have treatment from us. And hopefully, none of us are recommending treatment for someone who doesn't need it, that we wouldn't treat our own family with. So this isn't a course on how to get anyone to buy orthodontics from you, whether they need it or not. The presumption here that's paramount to all of this is that you're only recommending treatment for people who you would do treatment on your own family for. Okay. But if you're going to do that, the also presumption would be that that treatment is good for the patient, even if they don't understand it, and they should have that treatment. Therefore, we should be good at the sales process. And so if there is a linear and direct correlation between TRC and same-day start percentage, the percentage of your starts that are same-day starts, and if there is one lever to pull to get your conversion percentage to go up, it's to increase the amount of same-day starts, because we know that the further patients go away from the recommend, the less likely they are to do treatment. Now, we talked about the three parts of business before. There's also three components of a business. It's separate from the three functions, which are people, process, and technology. So in the second part of this lecture, we're going to talk a lot about process and technologies, the part we talk about in January or February. But the most important part is the people part, the most important function of any business, component of any business. And we're going to spend a good chunk of today talking about people, the way they think, and the way we should be interacting with them. So this man's name is Daniel Handler. You may know him from his pen name, Lemony Snicket. He's written a bunch of books, including a series of unfortunate events, which has made movies and Netflix stuff out of. And he has maybe my favorite quote of all time. All the secrets of the world are contained within books. Read at your own risk, which is hilariously snarky and sarcastic, but also true. Many of the things we sit around and complain about are all out there in books. All we have to do is read them. But if we do, be careful, because our excuses of not knowing or complaining may go away. And then what? Which I think is very funny, but completely appropriate. So we're going to kind of give you a bibliography of success. I'm definitely not the smartest guy out there, but I am pretty determined. And I love to read or listen to books and learn from other smart people. And it's amazing how much kind of sticks after you force enough information through in between your ears. And so, I think the foundation of a lot of this is characterized in this book, Leadership and Self-Deception, which is a great book. And they talk about a doctor in there, Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, who was an obstetrician in the 1800s in Vienna. And so he was working for a hospital there, and they had basically two clinics. So one clinic was called Clinic A, and one clinic, Clinic B. Now, Clinic A, they measured everything because it was a teaching institution, and Clinic A had 10% maternal mortality rate, which meant 1 out of every 10 moms that went there to have a baby died. Okay, so that's not good. Clinic B had a 4%, 4 out of 100, not 1 out of 10, which is still not good by today's standards, but way better than 1 out of every 10. And so what would happen is that word on the street got out, and these clinics were for the very low income, super low income, homeless prostitutes. They had no other place to go to deliver their babies. And so word got out that Clinic A, you had a 1 in 10 chance of dying, or if you go to Clinic A, the chance of dying were way higher. So people would go to Clinic B. And Clinic B started overflowing with patients. And so people would actually go have their babies literally in the gutter, and then they'd measure the mortality rate there, and that was lower than Clinic A. And so the mothers of these babies were getting something called childbed fever, which was something that they didn't understand but was killing people. So they tried to figure out what it was. They measured, are they too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny, what religion they were, what color their eyes, any number of things. And one day, Dr. Semmelweis' colleague, one of his best friends, another doctor, was doing an autopsy, and he stuck himself with a scalpel, and he became sick and he died. And when Dr. Semmelweis was doing the autopsy on him, he realized that his friend had the same presentation on autopsy as the dead moms did, with the same childbed fever. And so what had happened is that when the doctors were not delivering babies, they would be doing what, good student, it was a teaching hospital, what good student doctors would do, and they'd be working on cadavers, studying them, doing autopsies. And so the difference between the two clinics, Clinic A and B, wasn't one had more fat people or one had more short people, or one was overcrowded or one was undercrowded. The only difference between the two clinics is that Clinic A was where the doctors were working, and Clinic B was where the midwives were working. And so the one variable that was actually increasing the risk of you dying was nothing other than the doctors. See, they were working on the autopsies in one room, and then they'd go into the other room and deliver the babies, and they didn't wash their hands in between, and they would infect the mothers, who would then become sick from the germs from the autopsies, from the dead bodies, and then they would die. And so Dr. Semmelweis is considered the father of modern germ theory, because he figured out, after killing many people, including his friend, that he was infecting the women, being the one to kill them. And so the reason I tell this story, and the reason it's in the book, is, I ask you doctors in your office, all the things that you complain about are the things that the ills of your business, is it possible the cause of them is you? And so I think it's worth looking in the mirror at the very first and realizing, the employees that I am complaining about and that I'm blaming for the issues that I have in my business, who hired them? And, the bottleneck that happens in the clinic, or being on the phone or on the internet when you could be out there treating patients, or the efficiencies in your office. And those boil down to who? And I think if you really look in the mirror, the answer is typically us. And so I think that's the foundation of everything we need to do to think about how to make our practices better, is to realize what it is that we contribute. So many times when Kaz and I give these lectures, it's in a room full of people, and there's a lot of team members that come and watch us. And when we talk about this, hey, doctor, pay attention part, all the team members are looking at each other, and they're nodding and kind of smiling like, yeah, my doctor does that, and they do a bunch of dumb stuff, and if they just listen to me, then life would be better. But not so fast, team members. You guys do a bunch of stuff that could be helped out too. So this is another great book by Cy Wakeman called Reality-Based Leadership, and she talks about drama in the workplace. And I thought this, part was really appropriate for us. She talks about 3 different ways that you could sort of interpret things that happen. One is the victim. And so, well, it's not my fault. I know that I showed up late for my interview, and I smell like I took a big bong rip in my car, because I did, but it's not my fault that they didn't hire me because they didn't know what they were talking about. And I don't know about you guys, but that seems like half the people that I interview anymore for positions are like that. The second is the villain. It's not only it's not my fault, but it's your fault. If my office manager wasn't so mean, then I wouldn't show up to work late every day, 30 minutes, right? And so, or traffic, or any number of reasons why you're late. It's always somebody else's fault, and it's this particular person's fault. And then it's helpless. There's nothing I can do. It's Corona or whatever else is the reason why things are bad. And so, any number of these things you can put blame on, or you can convince yourself that is the reason for things that are going wrong. But one strong look in the mirror is really all that you need to do to peel back some of the layers and realize that all of us have things that we can work on. And so the one thing we should be thinking about in our businesses is, how do I deliver value for my customers and my team, both today and in the future? So, if you're thinking there, if you're a team member and you're thinking, I think the normal mindset is that, the way that I make more money is to keep my butt in the same chair as it revolves around the sun one time. And so 1 year from now, if I'm sitting in the same chair, then I deserve a raise, right? And so that's not giving more value to your customer. That's, loyalty, if nothing else, which is a component of value, but not a driver of value. And so, we need to be thinking about, how do I deliver more value for my customers and my team today and in the future? And then that's where values thrive, both for the team members. That's how you get ahead in the office, and for the doctors. That's how you drive growth in your business. Gary Vaynerchuk, a really bright guy. He's got a great podcast. If you turn on your car, don't do it with the kids on unless you have the earmuffs. There's lots of F-bombs in there. But he says, amongst a lot of smart things, when you know who you are, everything changes. And, the biggest gift that you can give yourself is the gift of an accurate self-perception. Because, again, when you know who you are, everything changes. And, temet nosce in Latin means know thyself. And it's a good word to write in Sharpie on your mirror so you look at it every day and try to make sure that, do you understand who you are that day and every day? Because, when you know where you're starting, then you know which direction that you can go. So shifting gears here, what's the most important business process? This is a great book by Dale Doughton called Great Employees Only. And he'll say that, which I agree with, the most important business process is the acquisition, development, and retention of talent. So you bring on great people, you don't train them, you develop them, and then you retain them. And that's how great businesses move forward. And so one of the things he talks about, which I think is really smart, is the concept of reactive versus proactive hiring. So if we, again, if we raise hands in the audience and we say, okay, do you think that you hire more reactively or proactively? I think most of us hire reactively. So we wait until you need a new team member with white hot urgency. 3 people have gotten pregnant and one person moved, his husband moved out of town, and now you are down and it's about to be summertime. And so you're mad scramble to hire somebody extra, right? And then, the one thing on someone's resume that you look for when you're hiring in a pinch is the word experience, right? And so you're looking for someone experienced to come in so you don't have to train them so that they can get up to speed quickly. But then, I don't know much where you are, but where I am, there's not just all these awesome team members with experience that are walking around on the street just waiting for you to offer them a job. Normally the good team members who have experience, they don't leave their job because they're valuable and the other doctors keep them there. So then most of the time you get, at the very best, mediocre team members if you're hiring locally from experience. Now, once in a while you get lucky and somebody moves into your town and they're looking for a job. But most of the time you wind up getting a very average or to below average team member. And then when you ask them to change and do same-day starts or do some other things, then they just don't have the capability to do it because you haven't done a good job acquiring that talent. Versus proactively, you can reach out, you can hire someone, that's extra that you can train and develop. And so then when you need the person or when you need someone to step in to do a same-day start, or when your office gets busy in the afternoon, they can jump in there, and then you can maintain your great customer service. So I think the difference between mediocre and great teams are those ones that both hire proactively versus reactively, and they staff to the level of where they want to be, not to what level of where they are. They staff to their growth. And so you should have a little bit of a bench on your team, and you should constantly be training and developing people so that the cupboard isn't bare, because your team is your best asset. And that's the way that you grow and continue to provide excellent customer service. So how do you develop your team? This is a great book by Captain David Marquet. He was a captain of the U.S. Navy nuclear submarine, the USS Santa Fe. And so this was the least performing ship in the nuclear submarine in the Navy, and he came in and he literally turned the ship around to the best performing ship, and then wrote a book about how he did it. And so what he talks about is developing what he calls the leader-leader model. Now, military is typically leader-follower. So, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, I'm the boss and you're the follower, so I tell you and then you do, which is very similar to how we're trained as doctors. Yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor. And so whatever the attending or the senior doctor says, then the younger one does it, yes, sir, no, sir. And then we turn around, and that's how we've been trained. So that's how we train the people that work with us. And so we say jump, and we expect them to say how high. And what you wind up is to get a bunch of mindless people that are working for you. And so, you know, Forbes has a quote of the day, and I think this is appropriate here. If you delegate tasks, you'll raise up doers. If you delegate authority, you'll raise up leaders. And the purpose of this book was to talk about the leader-leader model. And so he wanted to not lead people by direction. He wanted to create leadership by intention. So instead of saying, Captain, permission to submerge the ship, he wanted his team members to come to him and say, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. And so at the beginning, you know, he would have to teach them, you know, what the appropriate things were in order to submerge the ship. So check the gauges, make sure there wasn't any whales that were underneath the ship or whatever is necessary. But once they had that knowledge, he would expect them to lead by intention. And so, you know, what that does is that creates psychological ownership. You know, so the person has to think about what it is they want to do, communicate their desire to do that, and so they then create a psychological ownership of that idea, which makes them more likely to follow through. So if you think about how to manage that in an orthodontic office, you know, do you think it's possible to develop your team that works chairside so that you can teach them the things that are necessary to understand when you're putting in a 1425 wire, per se? So instead of coming over, looking at the patient, and the 1425 wires are supposed to go in that day, they're sitting there on the chairside table. The assistant is waiting for you to tell them what to do, and you come over and you say, yep, put in the 1425 wires and chain the upper 2 to 2, and we'll see him back in 8 weeks, right? Versus if you teach the team members how to do it, do you think it's possible to come over and instead of waiting to be told, you know, because most of us will say next time put in 1425 wires or new wires, is it possible to train them so that they know what wires should go in, 1425s? If they see space upper 2 to 2, they know to chain it. They can check the elastics, and do they need to continue them or should they reduce them just tonight? And most of the time we do another 8-week increment, so can they already have scheduled the next 8-week increment? So by the time you get over there, they can tell you, doctor, I intend to do this. We need to keep these elastics. We're going to do these chains. And you can say, very well, and move on. And then everything's already done while they've been waiting for you. And that psychological ownership has been proven to build happier, more capable team members. And that's the focus of the book. And rather than having, you know, one person with one big idea, what's more powerful? One person or, you know, tens or hundreds of people thinking together, working towards solving a challenge or creating something new. And so, you know, obviously more heads are better than none. Now, this isn't an excuse for you to hand off all of your authority or your management to everybody else. But there's a great concept called the 10-80-10 rule. And so what it means is that a leader can be involved in the first 10%, and then 80% of the bulk of the project can be done by someone else, and then another 10% at the end can be done by the manager following up. So I'll give you an example. We went to visit Koz's office with our team, and one of my team members saw the sterilization procedures they had, and he's all steam, autoclave, cassette-based sterilization, you know, state-of-the-art stuff, and we didn't. This is maybe 10 years ago, and my team member says, hey, we really need to do that. And I agreed with her, but I just didn't have time to like get into looking into researching it all and doing whatever. So I said, okay, if you want to do this, let's sit down and put together, you know, all the things that we need, what the budget would be and what it would take, and then we can talk about it. So we sort of game planned from the beginning, and then she went back, and I was getting text messages on Friday night about what instruments we need to buy and how she just saved us $2 a plier here and there. And she did an incredible amount of work putting it together. And then we met at the end for the last 10% to get everything finalized. And she launched the entire product, the new sterilization system herself, and helped me get buy-in with all the team. And it never would have gone anywhere near that smoothly if I had tried to do it on my own. And by empowering your teammates, not only do you free up time for you to do other things, but you give psychological ownership in a project so that they feel compelled to help make it succeed just as much as you do, or more, since they're the one doing most of the work, and it leads to better performance in the office. Another great book by Ed Catmull, who's the founder of Pixar, tells a story about the genesis of Pixar and working for George Lucas in the Industrial Light and Magic filmmaking business, and the Return of Jedi, all the way through Steve Jobs becoming involved in the company. Disney, and then working on Disney animation, kind of revitalizing that. It's a great book. And he tells a story about this particular code, /BIN/RM-R-F***. And so back in the day, each file that they were working on was in a folder, and each little scene, as they stitched them together into animation, they would have these huge files with all these individual little frames in them. And so this code in particular was if they decided to scrap like a particular bucket of files that may have thousands or tens of thousands of files in it, you could type this code in. So one day, you know, they're working on Toy Story 2, and it's getting towards the end. There's a few months left before they before it goes to you know, to launch into the films. And as they're working on it, animating it, all of a sudden some of the frames start to disappear, and Woody disappears, and then a few minutes later, you know, Buzz is gone from some of the things, and then Mr. Potato Head is gone. And what had happened was someone had typed in that code into the mainframe of the computer, and it was deleting the entirety of the movie. And so they realized what was happening. They ran around. It was back in the day when they had a big mainframe computer, and so they literally went to pull the plug on the mainframe computer once they realized what was happening, but it was too late, and the vast majority of the movie was either corrupted or gone. And so what did they do at that point? Well, they called a big meeting, and they tried to invite everyone in, and they said, okay, well, how are we going to solve for this? And one of the ladies who was working there in the Pixar headquarters had just gotten back from maternity leave, and while she was home, after she had her baby, she was working from home, and they had actually set up, this isn't the day like today with the internet, but they'd actually set up a mainframe computer in her house because she was important enough so she could work from home then, and it would upload the entirety of the data files into her computer on a daily basis. And so, you know, it hadn't communicated back with the main hub yet, so it didn't know to delete everything. So they ran over there, and they looked on the computer, and the computer actually had all of the files. And so they brought it back to the Pixar headquarters, and Ed Catmull tells the story of them carrying the computer into the headquarters like an Egyptian pharaoh, and they were able to restore the movie and make the deadline, and all was fine. But the question becomes, you know, what happens, you know, what did the management do when they realized such a colossal error had happened? You know, well, they got they restored the film first, you know, make sure the backup, they did have a tape backup, but they hadn't checked it in a while, and that was corrupted too. So they made sure there was no way for the backup not to happen again. And then they made it much more difficult to delete something. So they got rid of that code and made a bunch more layers to make sure you couldn't just accidentally delete everything. What they did not do, you know, and if you think about it, what would your reaction? What they did not do is do an immediate witch hunt to find the person that typed in that code, right? Because Catmull was a smart enough leader that he knew that if he was going to empower his team, that was the only way he was going to get amazing things, is to empower the team and bring out the creativity and the desire and the determination of each individual person to create something great. And you can't do that if there's a huge fear of repercussion if you make a mistake. It's just impossible to have a leader model if everyone's afraid if they make a mistake. And so 100% of people are capable of making mistakes, and 100% of people are also capable of being recognizing your mistake when you make it. And so if you get everyone working together as one unit, as one team with one singular vision, you can create something great. And that doesn't happen if your first reaction to failure or mistake making is punishment. This is one of my favorite pictures or memes of all times. You know, even great companies make mistakes along the way, and empowering your team requires managing some challenging times when, you know, it's one thing when we make a mistake and we expect our team to be there for us, and it's another as leaders to watch as other team members make mistakes and watch them learn and grow and help them overcome them and rise up to learn to not do it in the future. Gary Vaynerchuk also says the quickest way to tell someone is a loser is hear them cast blame. Blaming is for losers. And I think that's a really powerful statement. If you think about it in our lives, how many things are blame, how many victims or villains or helpless people are there. And what it boils down to is that if blaming is a big part of your life, success won't be. And think about that and hear yourself when you're blaming other people for things. Then realize that that's the last thing that will get you to be more successful. If I'm unhappy with the performance of my team, it's my fault. And so if we start with that leadership and self-deception, temet nosce, and understand how we need to think about things to go forward in the future, it really starts with understanding both where we are in performance and then realizing how to build a team and build them up rather than break them down. So if we shift gears into sales theory, one of the things I think we're taught to sell on is expertise when we really need to learn to sell on trust and value. So if we think about, this is a good book, Creating Trust in an Understandably Untrusting World. We had a doctor here in Detroit that was prescribing chemotherapy for cancer to patients who didn't have cancer so that he could make money. And they found out that he actually killed 2 people who didn't have cancer by prescribing so much chemotherapy to them, and they died. So he's in jail now, and may he rot there. But, this is a doctor, and we all have sketchy doctors in our neighborhood, regardless of what area of medicine or dentistry they practice in, and their sketchiness rubs off on us. And so we have to understand that and not really blame our patients for the fact they don't trust us, understand they don't trust us, and help learn how we can build trust when they should be skeptical. So some of the things we think about is expertise is assumed. So many of us, the things that they have on the wall is their diplomas. I went here, I went there, and I went to this study club in 1987 with this oral surgeon, I did this or that, and so plaques and plaques and plaques. And we're not out there like the pizza store spinning the arrow trying to get people in or hustling on the street to bring them in. They're coming to us, they know that we're doctors, and so for most part, the expertise is assumed, but the trust isn't. So maybe, putting your own patients on your wall versus your diploma so they can see your work and so they can realize the beautiful smiles that you have created personally is maybe a better way to transfer trust than your diploma. You need to become an excellent orthodontist. So, everyone in your office, including your TC, knows if you're good at what you do or not. And so until you become good, or if you're using cheap stuff or whatever, the people in your office know it, and that will transfer into your sales process. So first and foremost, become a great orthodontist and give guys like Stu Frost and Trevor Nichols a call and take some of their courses, if you haven't, and really, perfect your craft. Always tell the truth, no matter what. And so the truth is one thing that's easy to retell. So if you have people come in multiple times, if they, we all have the ones they come in and you tell them something and you come back and they want to hear what you had to say again, and telling them the truth no matter what is the most important thing. Never try to sell something to them that they don't need or that you wouldn't do for your own child. And you have to be consistent. So one time if you come in, you tell them you should take teeth out, and the next time they come in, you tell them you don't need to take teeth out, or an expander and don't need an expander. You're really going to confuse both your team and your prospective customers. So try to be consistent in your recommendations. And again, don't ever sell anything you don't believe is honest or best in category. So the moment that your treatment coordinators and your team members are smart, so they know after they've worked with you for a little while which patients should be in recommended treatment and which ones shouldn't. And if you ever start, recommending things just to try to get them to start, same day or otherwise, your team is going to realize it. They're not going to trust you that you're doing what's right for the patients anymore, and that's going to bleed into your success. And so regardless of anything, and I know we're talking about sales here, but sales doesn't mean selling people stuff they don't need. It's how to help them understand how to get something that they do. So never recommend anything that they don't need. Reviews, it's kind of yesterday's news, but the idea of social interaction and social proof is what we're talking about in a little bit. putting people on recall when they're there to buy and they're ready to buy, but you tell them, hey, now's not the right time, that builds trust, rather than recommending to people even though that you know will buy from you, even though they might not be ready or it might not be the time you would start your own child. And then at least be above average with your fees. So, you know, we talked about competing on price, and you know, if you're thinking about wine, if I were to tell you a bottle is worth $80, or a bottle, in fact, they have lots of studies, you know, they compare a $100 bottle of wine to a $20 bottle of wine, and they do the Pepsi challenge. So they'll take the $100 bottle and they'll tell people it's a $20 bottle, and they'll take the 20 and tell them it's 100. And 80% of the people pick the $100 wine as tasting better all the time, regardless of which wine it is, the cheap one and the expensive one, because people think expensive is better. And so, you know, if you feel like you're mediocre with your fees and you should charge higher, then do, and we'll probably increase the amount of business people do with you. Never ever lower your fees to make a deal. So if you say, well, my fee is $6,000, and they say, well, Dr. Jones up the street could do it for $5,000, you say, oh, okay, $5,000 it is. You know, you effectively just told the patient that you were lying to them, that your service was worth $6,000, but it's actually worth $5,000. But you know, good for them for being a good negotiator. You caught me. I really was am worth $5,000, but I was going to charge you $6,000, and that ruins your trust, both with your TC and your customer. And they tell everyone in your community, hey, just tell them that you could get it for less, and then they'll charge you less. It's terrible for business. Never ever lower your fees to make a deal. Keep your price integrity. So deal making, fee reductions damage trust, because there's always someone who will do it cheaper. Excuse me. So many of you have probably seen this, but it's always a good one. So great book by Robert Cialdini. There is a YouTube video that you can watch on this of all the books that I've read or listened to. This one's pretty dry. So if this information doesn't do it for you, watch the YouTube video before you try to read the book. But, you know, he talks about influence, and he begins the story with talking about turkeys. So, you know, the idea, click whir. So what does he mean by that? So he studies these wild turkeys, and you know, he would study the turkey, the mama turkey with the baby turkeys. And, you know, the turkeys, the baby turkeys would make this cheep, cheep, cheep sound, and the mom would go over and feed the baby turkey. Now, the natural predator for the baby turkey is the polecat. So naturally, mama turkeys hate the polecat. So if a mama turkey sees the polecat, the immediate chasing and pecking and running off in a frenzy of feathers, trying to chase the polecat away so the polecat doesn't eat the baby turkeys. And so they did this experiment where they took a taxidermy polecat, and they put a dead one, and they put it near the mama turkey, and the mama turkey went and pecked the polecat and feathers and polecat fur and everything. And so then they did a tape recording of the baby turkeys when they were cheeping, when they were hungry, and they put that inside of the taxidermied polecat, and they put it back over by the mama turkey and turned on the cheep, cheep, cheep sound, and guess what happened? The mama turkey went over and tried to feed the polecat, right? So there was this click whir, and they had something happened, and it totally changed the behavior of the mama turkey. She heard the cheep, cheep, cheeping, and she fed the polecat, even though her natural instinct would be to tear the thing to shreds. And so what Cialdini postulates is, hey, are there things in human beings that behave the same way, where you know, click whir would happen, and then it would influence their behavior. And so that's the premise of the book. And when he found that there was 6 what he called weapons of influence that you could use for good or for bad. So these are things that if you're being unscrupulous with your sales, you could help sell iced Eskimos, as the expression goes. But if you're selling with integrity, there are also things you should understand, so that you can strategize them to your advantage to help understand, you know, how you might be more persuasive in your sales process. So the first one is commitment. Once establishing an initial position, people are more likely to take a position consistent with that commitment. So they did a study of insurance salespeople. So in New York, in order to sell insurance to someone, you have to meet in person. But the way they would drum up leads is they would cold call them. So they call you on your phone, and you would answer, and then they would try to sell you insurance. And what they realized is you know, if you said, yeah, I'll sell insurance, they'd have to meet you and then consummate the insurance sale in person. But there was a huge degree of attrition, people that would say, hey, I'll do it, but then they wouldn't show up and actually do it. So they tried a bunch of different techniques, and there was one question that was more effective than all of them. And so once they got them to say yes to buying insurance, they would ask this question. They would say, okay, you know, can you tell me, you know, what one thing about my sales presentation was the thing that made you decide to do the insurance? And it didn't matter what they said. It could say price. It could say that, you know, your voice was charming. It could have been anything. The response was irrelevant. It's just they picked something. They made a commitment to, this is the reason why. And if they made some commitment one way or the other, they were 19% more likely to show up and sign the insurance coverage. 19%. You know, so you think in the orthodontic office, you know, as you're talking with patients, you know, if I had a magic wand, is there one thing that you would like me to fix? And it doesn't really matter what they say. Having them commit that they want you to fix something, statistics and this influence studies show that the patient will be more likely to do business with you just by asking that question. And that has nothing to do with slippery, slimy, pushy sales tactics. It's just someone committing to doing something they want raises the chances that they'll actually do that, you know. It's interesting. So reciprocity, a person will try to repay in kind what another person has provided. So it's the holiday season, and think about if you're going to visit your friend or to a holiday party and someone surprises you and they've gotten you a gift for the holidays and you've gotten them nothing. So if you can imagine that situation, how uncomfortable it is, you get that feeling in your stomach. That's reciprocity in action. So you want to repay them something even though you haven't given them something. And so, you know, if you think about your new patient process, you know, do you give them a t-shirt, you know, and do you give them the t-shirt after they start or before they start? How much would it cost you to give everyone ahead of time a t-shirt rather than wait until after they start? You know, Cialdini would suggest that the patient would be more likely to want to repay you back in kind with their business, with reciprocity. Do you offer them coffee? You know, we go ahead and offer them coffee in a coffee mug that we'll let them keep if they want to, rather than the little you know, disposable coffee cup. And so, and we do that for a reason. We do that to inspire reciprocity in the person. Plus, they're carrying our mug around when they drink their coffee. So, there's a lot of ways you can think about this in your business. You know, we like people who are like us or more likely to say yes to their requests, so similarity. So some of the people that it's easy for, you're very similar physically to the people in your community. Other people may live in a community where you're pretty dissimilar to the major parts of the community. But, you know, one of the things you can do is try to find that similarity in your discussion, you know. Talk to them, find out what it is that they like. Hey, you play baseball? My son likes baseball, or I liked baseball when I was a kid, or I like this or like that, and try to find something that you have in common. And principles of influence would say identifying that commonality or that similarity would make people more likely to do business with you. Authority, strong societal pressures to comply with the requests of authority figures. We, you know, as doctors, we kind of have that already. Some people play to that by putting the white coat on, which is just a symbol of authority. Hey, I'm the doctor, you're not. We go for more of the similarity concepts in our office. In fact, this is what I wear. I wore to work to see patients today. And so we're going for more of a low-key vibe than the strong authority vibe. I know other doctors who wear the white coats and the ties that are successful with that too. That's just not me. So this is more authentic, that you can do what you were. Sort of the landmark study on authority is in the 60s at Yale by Stanley Milgram, when they're trying to figure out how, you know, Nazi Germany was able to create the Holocaust and get some of these soldiers to do some of the atrocities in the Holocaust. And basically the study was, you know, there were two components of the study. The first one was the person they were studying, and the second one was supposedly another person in the study, but was actually an actor. And so the actor was going to be told a list of words that they would have to remember, and if they didn't remember them, the person in the study was the one who was being studied was supposed to deliver an electric shock, zap them. And so in theory, the study was to see how electric shocks stimulate memory, but it actually was to study if a figure of authority, a doctor with a clipboard there, was telling them to shock the patient, how many shocks would they give them in a row? And each time they missed it, the shock would go up by 15 volts. So they would take them all the way up to 450 volts and 400 increment shocks, and to see how many people would do it. And after, halfway through the shocks, the actor patient would start yelling, saying that their chest was hurting, please stop, please stop, please stop. And ultimately they would become unresponsive if this person kept delivering the shocks after 300 and some volts. And so the question was, how many people made it all the way up to the 450 volts and continuing shocking the unresponsive patient? Because the doctor, when the person objected to shocking them, would say, no, you must continue. Yes, sir, you agree to the study, you must continue. And then I demand that you continue as part of the study. So the study would stop one of two ways. They deliver all the shocks at 450 volts, or they would resist the doctor or authority 3 times. They would tell them no, and then the study would stop. So how many people went all the way up to the 450 volts, shocking an unresponsive patient? 65% of the people in the study. So a crazy amount of people would do that, which shows the impact of authority. Now, it's obviously not the way we want to, use that as doctors or as an orthodontist, but it's important to understand what a powerful thing authority is. And there's a company out there, Advantage Media, Forbes Books, which I have no financial relationship, but I talk about a lot, and I love what they do. And there's a whole concept of authority marketing that you can play into as a doctor by writing a book and doing some other things that we'll talk about later. But it's really important to understand this concept of authority. Excuse me. So scarcity, people align more value, things they perceive as less available. So think about, rare cars or watches. And this concept is super utilized in retail. So if you think about any kind of sale that you have in retail, there's always an end date. So when the sale is going to end, it's going to end on that day, and when that day the sale ends. So if you are going to do any kind of sales promotions in your office where you offer something, whether it be a reduction in fee or some sort of bonus for starting, you need to have that concept of scarcity, because if they don't start by such and such day, then it goes away, which is a powerful, influential thing. And then social proof. People decide how to act or what to believe based on what other people are doing. And the internet and reviews and YouTube and TikTok and all the other crazy things that people will do based on what others are doing have proved that. And so in the internet age, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that reviews and whatnot, blogs and things like that are many times more important than what the doctor has to say. So we need to make sure our online reputation is stellar and that people are saying good things about us, which boils down to customer service. So to dive a little deeper into sales theory, Daniel Pink has a great book called To Sell is Human, and he talks about the death of a salesman, your traditional salesman, the encyclopedia. Maybe some of us are old enough to remember the door-to-door encyclopedia salesman or whatever else, and how that doesn't really exist anymore. And basically that we're all in sales anymore, and there's 2 types of selling. There's traditional sales, and then there's non-sales selling. So traditional sales, if we think about that, would be our reps that come into our office to try to sell us stuff, or car salesmen, or whomever. And non-sales selling is us. So whether you're a cardiologist or an orthodontist, or you sell carpet or whatever, you have to convince your prospective customer why to do business with them, whether it be the healthcare service you're providing or paying you for it, or both. And so when we think about sales and marketing, we kind of think about them as dirty words, but really the way that I define marketing is it's just the message that you put out about your business and why it's important. So it comes down to basically everything that you do in your business is marketing. Where your office is located, what your team looks like, what they dress like, what your office smells like, what music you're playing, what type of technology you're using, the appearance of your office. Does it appear sterile? Does it appear fun? Any number of things that go involved in not just what ads you put on Google or what your Facebook page looks like, or what teams you sponsor. Every little detail about what you do is the message you're putting out in the business and why it's important. And then sales is just the process of taking a prospective customer and converting them into customer. That's it. There's nothing deceptive or disingenuous about it. It's somebody that wants to do business with you, and now they do business with you. And then TRC, the treatment recommended conversion, is just your scoreboard. It's the measurement of how effective your marketing is. If you have ineffective marketing, then your sales process will suffer. If you have good marketing, then your sales process will be stronger. And the TRC is the scoreboard that you look at to tell how you're doing. And that's all that it is. And so I think sort of demystifying those two things and understanding what they are, and looking at its basic form, you know, if you're recommending treatment to somebody, do they say yes or do they not say yes? And, you know, if you're recommending treatment to somebody, the presumption would be that that treatment will be good for them. And so saying yes to your recommendation would be good for the patient, even though they may not understand why their overbite that doesn't look like a big deal to them is important. You know, your marketing process is part of what drives the patient to understand why they should do business with you and why they should pay you for your services. You know, many of us, I'm not, but many people might be listening are, and I've been doing this 20 years, are old enough where there was a time, yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor. Occasionally we get people who come directly from other countries, and there's still that layer of respect for doctors with yes, doctor, whatever you say. But in the United States, you know, most people who read Mommy Blog yesterday think they know more about what's going on in your office than you do, or they watch a YouTube video or whatever. And the respect layer for doctor just isn't there. So if you want to prescribe 4 buys out and a headgear, you know, you're going to hear them peeling out of your parking lot, and they're going to be on Google finding a second opinion before their rubber marks hit your parking lot. Now, it used to be in the era of what, yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor. The reason for that being was what Daniel Pink calls information asymmetry. And so the doctor had all the information and the patient had none, or the car salesman had all the information and the prospective client had none. And so a Latin saying, caveat emptor, means buyer beware. The reason that came about is because, you know, the salesperson had all the info, and the client, the prospective customer, had no way to get the information. So if you recommended 4 bicuspids and a headgear, they would say, yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor, because they had really no other alternatives. And a real shift now is with information parity with the advent of the internet. So now it's more of caveat venditor, which is seller beware. If you provide services or things that are either disingenuous, untrustworthy, or not what the patient would want, you better beware, because they're going to, you know, post really negative things about you, say really bad things about you. And they can find out quickly information that used to be only available to the doctors. So information is much more a level playing field. And he tells a story about, you know, if you think about what the salesiest of salespeople is, you think used cars. And he tells a story about the most successful used car dealership in North America is on the Eastern Seaboard. And in their lobby, they have a big, huge bank of computers with Carfax, the website up there. And all the used cars that they have on their lot, they give you the VIN number when you look at it, and you just go in and punch it into the Carfax website, which isn't run by them, right in their waiting room. It basically says, hey, we're telling you the truth, and if you don't believe me, here, go check on this car, and you'll see what we're saying is the truth. And so that, the concept of that, you know, made their business go boom, and they're the most successful car dealership in North America. So I think there's something to be said about how we educate our patients. And so, again, one of the reasons maybe to write our book is that if the patient reads that, then they're consuming information that they don't directly associate with you, and then that sort of sculpts their thinking into thinking the way that you do. And then they can help them drive their decision-making through this information parity concept. And so, you know, the ABCs of selling before used to be always be closing. And Daniel Pink suggests that they're now attunement, buoyancy, and clarity. They are the new ABCs of selling. And so, you know, as we wind down here, let's just talk briefly about those. So This is a little exercise we do in the in-person lecture. So if you imagine that you have a partner, if you're listening with somebody else, partner up, and one person is the watcher and the other person is the doer. And so what I want you to do is imagine drawing a capital E on your forehead. So take your finger and draw a capital E. Like if you have a partner, or pretend you have a partner, draw the E on your forehead. Okay, and then if when you think about the way that you draw that E, and so if you haven't taken the time to draw it, bear with me, do the little exercise, draw an E on your forehead. And then did you draw the E so that you could read it internally in your mind's eye, or did you draw it so that the person, your partner, could read it? Which way did you draw the E, right? And so that concept, the E test of how you drew it, is called attunement, the ability to step outside your own experience and imagine emotions, perceptions, and motivations of another. So many of us in orthodontics are good at drawing the E the way that the person would read it, because maybe we sit at the TC room, knee to knee, and we do it back and forth. But that concept of understanding what it's like to be somebody else is what he calls attunement, kind of tuning into the person's wavelength. Apple, I'm giving this presentation on an Apple computer right now, and if I pull the lid down and look at the top of the computer, the apple for me is upside down. So when I'm looking at the apple as the user, I'm looking at it upside down. But Steve Jobs is smart enough to realize that from a marketing perspective, it'd be better off with me looking at the apple upside down, somebody who's already bought an apple. And when you're in the coffee shop, everyone else is looking at the computer, seeing the apple the way that they want to see it, which would be upside down if he made it the way that I wanted to see it as the user. And so that concept of attunement is all the way up to companies like Apple. So I think it's worthwhile paying attention. And so when we talk about WIIFM, everyone's favorite radio station, what's in it for me radio. And that's what everyone's listening to. And whether we like it or not, at a basal level, people really only care what's in it for them. Whether they put on that they do that way or not, it's just the truth. So if you imagine people have little antennas like you used to on the TV, the old TVs with antennas before cable, and you constantly have to tune those antennas in, you need to do that with your prospective clients. You need to continually tune into their radio station and give them enough information, and you need to communicate with them in a bunch of different ways, because they're going to constantly be going out of tune because they're listening to a bunch of different things all at once. And you need to consistently tune their antenna so that your station, what's in it for doctor's office station, and what's in it for them is playing on the same wavelength, so that they start to understand what's in it for them to do business with you. You're attuning yourself to them. And so here's a little exercise, and I have a kid in the first grade now, and if you think about first person, second person, and third person, now do this little first person exercise for yourself. Pull out your any number of the written communications that you give to your customers, whether it's welcome to the office, your website, whatever it is. And then look at how many of the pronouns in your communication are written in the first person. Our office does this, I do this, we're a diamond provider of that, I'm really good at this. And so, I would challenge you that first person communication is really ineffective today, because even more so now than ever, because people really only care about themselves. So go through and count what percentage of your communication is in the first person, which is what is in the second person, talking about the word you. And so you should be about 75% or more second person versus first person. And I would bet your communication is the exact opposite of that. So I would challenge you to go through your correspondence and make it so that the only time you use a first person pronoun is when it is in the process of communicating a benefit to the patient. For example, we understand that you're very busy, so we've saved time for you in our schedule to be convenient. We know your time is important to you, and we've made our schedule flexible for your convenience. those are the only time that you should be using we when it directly talks about the benefit to them in the second person. And so look at that, and then you should be sculpting your conversations that way in the treatment coordinator room too. Less about you and more about what your services can do to benefit them, getting on their wavelength from an attunement. Buoyancy is a proper balance between downward and upward forces. So maybe you're old enough to remember Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. You know, optimism and, you know, like it or not, especially with social media and bullying, there's all kinds of pessimism, not good enough, not smart enough, and there's plenty of people that we deal with on a daily basis that are dealing with this. Then there's the realism, which is one of my favorite slides. And so there's an attributional style questionnaire, which measures the another insurance company did a test on how optimistic or pessimistic you were. And they found that if you scored on the optimistic half, you're 37% more insurance sales. You would perform 30% higher than the people who scored in the pessimistic half. And then if you scored in the top 10% of optimistic, you would sell 88% more insurance than the bottom 10% of pessimistic. So, you know, in baseball, they'll call it a hitter's mentality. You know, this guy's Miguel Cabrera, who at least a few years ago was the best hitter in all of baseball. And his batting average is, you know, he would get a hit maybe 1 out of every 3 times he would try, 333 batting average. But 2 out of every 3 times he'd try to get a hit, he wouldn't. And he's the best hitter on the planet. And I can guarantee you that every time he stepped up the plate, he wasn't thinking about the 2 out of 3 times he wasn't going to get a hit. He was sure he was going to get a hit every single time up to plate. And that's what made him the best. And so if you're thinking about, you know, either your competition down the street, how they're more expensive, or how you're more expensive than them, or any other reason about why you're not going to be the one that they choose, that's exactly what's going to happen, you know. And that all starts with becoming a great orthodontist. And you know, and then the second would be, you know, acquisition and development of really great teams, so that when you know, then the patient will be better served by seeing you than anyone else. You can be optimistic about that. And so you think about the way that your self-fulfilling prophecy and your self-talk works in your office, and how important that is, and to be, you know, the optimism which drives your sales issues. And your failures are temporary, because, you know, each time that you bring a patient in your office, understand that what you recommend is the best thing for them, and you're the best place for them to go, and that's going to influence your sales process. And then clarity, we must be clear in identifying both the problems and the solutions. So one of the things that we're not good at in orthodontics is we're not good at being clear. We love to confuse our prospective clients. So we'll start talking in a bunch of dental lingo that they don't understand about the mesial buccal cusp and class 2 this and overjet that, and we'll pull out the Panorex, which is really easy for us to see, but might as well be written in Martian for our patients. And we start drawing and doing this, and we confuse the heck out of them. You know, when most of the time all they want to know is, okay, does Johnny need braces? How long is it going to take, and what's it going to cost, right? And then why do I care is the most important thing. And, you know, my suggestion, especially to the doctors on the call, is to understand how you're communicating. Try to boil down your discussions into as layman's terms as you possibly can. Be very concise. Let them understand at the very basic level what they need and how long it'll take, how much it costs. And then let them ask you for more detail. And most of the time they won't. And then when somebody does, you know, we have a lot of engineers here in Detroit and they want to know all the details. When somebody asks you for the details, go ahead and give it to them. But don't give all the details to everyone, because they don't need it. And more often than not, you wind up confusing the people, and they get analysis paralysis, and they wind up leaving just because they don't understand, or you make them scared by telling them something because they don't understand and make it sound painful or complicated or expensive. So try to be really clear and concise with your communication. Johnny's got an overbite. He needs some braces. I think it's going to take 1.5 years or less. You know, we should be good to go. And you'll be surprised at how effective that can be, and how little questions there are most of the time. And so how does all of this apply to orthodontics? Well, that's part 2. And so what I've done for you this evening is set some of the psychological and mindset-related foundational pieces that are necessary for the next part, which is how to implement, the recipe for same-day starts to work in your practice. Follow-up shortly is going to be Dr. Jeff Kozlowski, who's going to give you, who's in my opinion, the world's leading authority on efficiencies and office efficiencies, and he's going to give you some amazing and mind-blowing tools on how to become more efficient in your office and in your schedule. And then we'll be back at the beginning part of the year talking about the exact recipe on how to implement same-day starts in your practice, as well as a bunch of other cultural and necessary things so that hopefully you can develop the practice of your dreams that can continue to improve year over year. I appreciate your time this evening. If you have any questions for me, you can go ahead and reach out on the internet. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram, although I am relatively slow to reply. All is not lost if I don't get back to you for a week or so. Or you can reach out through OrthoFI, who have my contact information. So thank you, OrthoFI, for the time and the opportunity to share some of this information. And I look forward to speaking with you all again in the second part. And then I also, with Koz, will be around at the end of the presentation this evening for a live question and answer session. So thank you very much.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jamie, so much. Dr. Reynolds, that was great. Great presentation. And I hope the audience got a lot of great takeaways from it about leadership, how to deliver more value to your customers, and how to position your practice to win in today's competitive marketplace. Being able to effectively manage your business is more important than ever as an orthodontist, because more patients are searching for ortho treatment than ever before due to clear aligners, direct-to-consumer, the Zoom effect, where everybody's looking at themselves all the time now. And on top of that, consumers are smarter and more resourceful than ever before as well, and they want convenience, affordability, and to buy from people they trust, like you talked about. We're going to take a quick little break here. For those of you that are in attendance tonight that aren't using OrthoFI yet, like I said earlier, right now is a great time to do a demo. We would love to share some time with you and really show you how OrthoFI can help add value to your practice with things like our best-in-class patient experience, whether it's through streamlining and easing onboarding or allowing patients to choose their own payment plan that also protects your financial portfolio through leveraging OrthoFI's intelligent flexibility, open choice model. So OrthoFI also helps you leverage conversion data and buyer trend data from more than 900,000 consults across the country and help you identify and really fine-tune your processes so that you can lift things like your TRC, your treatment recommended conversion rate that Dr. Reynolds talked about, up to 8 points higher than the industry average, which is what our OrthoFI clients all across the country are seeing. So we would love to spend some time. If you do a demo, all you gotta do is schedule it before December 18th. So even if you can't fit it in next week, but just get it scheduled before then, and you'll be entered in for a chance to win a $500 gift card. You can do that at startmoresmiles.com. We're going to take a quick little break. It's about 10 after, so we're going to start here in just about 5 minutes with Dr. Jeff Kozlowski. So we look forward to it. So grab a bathroom break, grab some water, maybe a cocktail, some wine or something, and we will connect you here in just a couple minutes.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, with the jingle belling and everyone telling you be of good cheer. Most wonderful time of the year. It's the happiest season of all, with those holiday greetings and gay happy meetings when friends come to call. It's the happiest season of all. There'll be parties for hosting, marshmallows for toasting, and caroling out in the snow. There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. It's the most wonderful time of the year. There'll be much mistletoeing and hearts will be glowing when loved ones are near. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. It's the most wonderful time of the year. There'll be
All right. Thanks for sticking with us here. We are going to keep it rolling. For those of you that already have done it, thank you so much. We've seen so many great questions come in. We've seen some awesome questions come in so far. If you have any questions for whether it's for Dr. Reynolds or Dr. Kozlowski, who is going to be coming up here now, please go ahead and use the Q&A function at the bottom. Just submit any questions. We'll answer some live. Both Dr. Kozlowski and Dr. Reynolds are on here tonight, and we'll be answering questions in there. And then we will also answer some of them live at the end. I want to do a little bit of engagement here again. So I'm going to kick off a new poll here to, let's see, I'm going to try to kick off another poll here for everybody. Just a couple quick questions here to really get you thinking about some of the concepts that Dr. Kozlowski is going to be talking about in his presentation here as well. So as I mentioned, our next speaker is presented all over the world on topics including digital orthodontics, facial aesthetics, efficiency, efficient early treatment, orthodontic treatment mechanics, and clinical efficiency. Dr. Kozlowski is world-renowned in his unique perspective on quality orthodontic treatment results and clinical efficiency. He graduated from the University of Syracuse with a bachelor's degree in economics. Prior to receiving his dental degree in orthodontic specialty certificate from State University of New York at Buffalo. He's been published in numerous orthodontic journals, including Seminars in Orthodontics, the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics, Clinical Impressions, and the Progressive Orthodontist. He's an avid cyclist and an endurance athlete. He's completed the Ironman an astonishing 5 times and the grueling Mount Washington bicycle hill climb 10 times. And while his competitive days are behind him, he's still an avid outdoorsman, avid cyclist, and loves to spend time skiing, hunting, fishing, spear fishing, and really hanging out with his family, his wife, and his two kids. He's been practicing orthodontics for more than 20 years and owns a number of thriving practices in the Connecticut area. And he's also one of OrthoFI's co-founders. So with no further ado, I am going to stop the poll here. Thank you for those of you that are engaging with us and being involved here. We really enjoy it. We're going to use some of the insights, like we said, to kind of lead some of the Q&A at the end. So with no further ado, we will get kicked off. So thank you so much.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Jeff Kozlowski here, and we're going to spend the next hour and a half or so talking about efficiency, production, and happiness in your practice. The subtitle of the presentation really is, are you overworking or underproducing? And the focus we're going to talk about tonight really is how clinical efficiency ties into your ability to produce in your practice, and then how your ability to produce your practice ties back into how you can impact your clinical efficiency. You know, this is how my brain works. Sometimes when I'm building either a presentation or an idea of a new system for an office, I just start with a flow chart. And to me, when I looked at my practice, I realized that everything's centered around the number of visits it took us to finish treatment. And so if you go north, you could look at how that affects your clinical efficiency based on mechanics and the patient motivation and how long, you know, how many appointments it takes and what do you do at each visit. And if you go to the east, number of visits, I realized allowed us to do more starts per day by reducing the number of visits. And can I work fewer days, spend more time with my family or on my bike or in the woods or fishing? And how does the schedule impact that to the south? You know, how do we build a schedule, design the clinic, assistance, treatment, and then how in reality does the clinical schedule flow? And if you go to the west over here, you'll see how the number of visits can impact treatment time, appointment intervals. Some of this stuff we'll catch up on a follow-up webinar, but this is basically the format of the presentation. But rather than going through it like this, we'll do it like this. We'll start with part one and talk about clinical efficiency. What does it mean to be clinically efficient? Well, efficiency is defined in Webster as the state or quality of being efficient. Great. We were taught in school not to use the word in the definition. And so anyway, I modified that to efficiency means to me achieving maximum productivity with minimum wasted effort or expense. And where treatment efficiency in terms of the number of visits to complete treatment comes into play, it's the minimum wasted effort. So the number one metric we work on in our office is what we call our efficiency metric. And this is the key metric number one we're going to talk about tonight. And that is the number of visits to complete treatment. So how many appointments does it take from the day your treatment starts to the day your treatment finishes? In this, we don't include new patient exams, recall visits, any preparatory work if you take records, et cetera. You know, we love it when a patient comes in for a new patient exam. In our office, it's a 45-minute exam. The TC takes an ICAT and photos. Because all the documentation is done ahead of time on OrthoFI, they're not shuffling a lot of papers. They know even before the new patient exam that the patient has all their health history and information filled out. So it allows us to be super effective with that appointment. But we love when that new patient comes in, their information is all filled out. We take the records in the first 10 minutes, diagnose and treatment plan, discuss it with the patient. And it's great when that turns into a same day start. So that's only one visit from new patient exam, records, and bonding or scan icon. It's super efficient. We don't count the appointment for treatment because, as we know, some patients we see young and they go on recall and they might have 5, 6, 7 recall visits before they ever start. And likewise, we don't count the appointments after treatment is completed. So the day the braces come off or the aligners are finished, we stop the count on this number of visits. Some practices, I was in a practice for a long time that we did retainer checks every 6 months for lifetime. And we in our practice are now down to 1 retainer evaluation post-treatment. And then we're obviously available for follow-up if the patients have any questions. But so number of visits is from, if you're talking brackets, from bonding to D-band, if you're talking aligners, from aligner delivery to aligner finish. And so this, you'll notice, is right at the center of the whole bowl of spaghetti here. How many appointments does it take you on average to complete treatment for each start that you do? You know, and I often ask this question in presentations, and then I'll say, who here knows exactly how many appointments on average it takes you to complete treatment across your practice, or even by treatment type, braces, aligners, phase one, whatever other treatment modalities you have? And it's really surprising to me that it's regularly less than 5% of the people who know. And so, you know, if you had a landscaping business and you didn't know how many lawns you could mow a day, you wouldn't even know how to begin to build your schedule. But most of us don't really truly know how many appointments it takes to do treatment, because we work 180 days a year and we go in and we see whatever's on the schedule. And often don't realize that the more, and you'll see this later in the presentation, the more appointments or visits it takes us to finish treatment, the more work we have to do. And so, you know, my first recommendation is, if you don't know your numbers, you should. Well, how do we evaluate our numbers in our practice? We do what we call a D-band spreadsheet. And basically, we put the patient, you know, the date of the D. We do it monthly. So at the end of the month, our practice manager pulls out of our practice management software all the patients that completed treatment at that month, or in that month. And then we enter for each patient, you'll see here for a second, we enter for each patient the estimated treatment time. See if I can annotate. There we go. Let's see if that'll work. I'll try the mouse here. So we write down the estimated months of treatment, the actual months of treatment, and then it auto calculates the difference. How many, and we evaluate this out of the practice management software. We don't take the numbers straight out of the practice management software, because often it's garbage in, garbage out. So when either Dr. Mike or myself or one or two of our assistants who do this review it, they literally go through the chart, they count the number of appointments, regular and extra care, and that tells us the number of visits. And what we end up with up here are averages. And so going back, let me go back. There we go. Okay, so going back across, and these are numbers for our full treatment braces. I decided just to work with those numbers, since braces continue to be a majority of what orthodontists in the market do, although aligners obviously are growing, and you'll see some discussion about aligners later in the presentation. But for 2020, across our practice, our average estimated treatment time is 19.15 months. Our average actual treatment time is 18.2 months for comprehensive braces, and that includes phase two. The difference is minus 0.95, so we're finishing ahead of what we estimate for patients. And we're doing it in 12.05 visits with 10.4 regular and 1.65 extra. But why is this even important? You'll see later as it relates to developing your schedule. You'll see as it relates to how much, what I call throughput, or work you have to do for each start. It's really simple like this. If we can finish every start in an average of 12 visits, and a practice takes 24 visits to finish each start, then for each start that the other practice does, they have to do double the amount of work effectively. And so in our practice, we want to be as effective with our time as we can. Not to mention, you know, in a COVID world where people want to get out of the house fewer times, and this is leaving the whole virtual appointment discussion out of it. Parents getting out of work and kids getting out of school, just the number of people that have to walk into your office every day, reducing visits is super important. So total visits to me is really the key to our treatment efficiency. And like I said, we're at 12.05 visits this year in 2020. You'll see our 2019 numbers, it's better than we were in 2019. So why is my goal 12 visits? Well, we're going to come back to that a little bit later. Getting some numbers reported in a combination from Chris Benson and in his practice evaluations, and particularly from Gage in their evaluation of all of their practices across North America. The reported industry average for the number of appointments to finish treatment is 19. And I mentioned we're going to come back to this because I don't think that's actually the average. All right, so I'm going to say at least we should agree as a profession that there's room for improvement with clinical efficiency. I know there's a lot of folks out there that are concerned about direct-to-consumer aligners where patients don't even have to have an orthodontist involved in treatment. They don't have to visit the office. You know, why do you think that is? Is it cost? Is it efficiency? Is it quality of life, time, et cetera? I think it's probably a combination of all those. But if we as orthodontists are still measuring our treatment time in years rather than the way parents age their toddlers, right? When a child is under 2 years old, we'll say they're 15 months old or 16 months old. We don't say they're 1 1/4 years old. And so I think we've got room to improve our treatment time, but more importantly, I really think we have room to improve our efficiency, both for the profession, the appearance of how orthodontics is provided to patients across the practices of orthodontics in the United States, and you know, and really for the improvement of your own efficiency in your office. So back to the definition of efficient: achieving maximum productivity with minimum wasted effort or expense. So we covered the minimum wasted effort, which is reducing the number of visits. Maximum productivity is, wouldn't we all like to produce more in our practice? And I think the answer is yes. So, but many times there's sort of this throughput backlog of managing the patients we have in active treatment. What do I mean by that? Think to yourself, if you've been at your morning huddle and you know your manager or scheduling coordinator says, and our next available D-band is 10 weeks out. The next available, whatever, 60-minute appointment for a D-band, or our next available afternoon adjustment is 8 weeks out. Well, if you have a patient that you're trying to finish up in treatment and you don't have those openings at a shorter cycle than is available in your schedule, you're lengthening treatment time. And in part 2 of this presentation, at some point in time down the road, we'll talk about how appointment intervals affect treatment time. So that's the first thing. And B, it's really a result of this bogging down of your clinical schedule based on the number of appointments it takes to finish treatment. So on to the second metric that we'll talk about tonight is the production metric, which is my key metric number 2, and that is starts per day. So literally measuring the number of starts you do per every day you're in the office. And if you've got a group practice, there's ways to look at this: starts per day that the office is open. If you have 2 doctor days, it could be starts per day that the doctor works, or starts per 2 doctor day. But really for me, it's starts per day that the office is open. And now we get over to the east side of this schedule here. If you're looking at the map, starts per day. So we're gonna talk about how number of visits to finish treatment can increase your starts or reduce your days while increasing your production. And we're actually going to answer the question, because I often get this, but you know, I don't have more starts to do. So why should I bother being more efficient? Well, you know, the answer to that is, would you like to work fewer days? Or would you like to work the same number of days and see fewer patients a day? So this reduction of number of visits affects the algorithm in 3 ways. You can either do more starts per day that you're already working. If you don't have more starts or don't want to do more starts, then you can see fewer patients a day and have easier, better quality of life days. Maybe you require 1 less assistant, reduction of overhead. Or maybe you want to work fewer days. Maybe you'd like to work 3 days a week and spend more time doing the hobbies that you do. So So that's what we're going to focus on in this next section. And so this production metric is really my gauge to daily production and quality of life. And you'll see how all this wraps together here. All right. So back to these numbers provided by Chris Benson and Gage. The average practice in the U.S., and I decided to start with this, you know, because we've got folks that have small practices, 100, 200 starts, and we have folks that have mega practices, 4 or 5 docs, 2,000, 3,000 starts a year. You know, they're all different versions of the operation of orthodontics. But if we're going to use this avatar of a practice, 180 patient days a year, the average orthodontist sees patients, okay? And I guess for argument's sake, let's say this is your average solo doctor, one location practice. They do 340 starts, which I think is higher than the JCO numbers, but I would argue that those folks who use Gage in their practices are probably the slightly higher than average or higher than average practices, so it probably skews this number upwards a little bit. The average practice also will see about 60 patients per day, and we'll have 5 assistants typically working out of about 4 scheduled columns of patients. So I guess the starting point is, let's agree that if this is an average practice, 180 patients a day, patient days a year, 340 starts, 60 patients a day and 5 assistants, because we're going to build all of our assumptions off of this. So, you know, I remember my math, you know, well, any version of math where you have a numerator and a denominator, and the things in the numerator and denominator that equal cancel out. So if you do 340 starts per year and you work 180 days per year, the years cancel out, and that means you divide 340 by 180 and you get 1.8 starts per day. And I think it's a good assumption, because it's the assumption that the average orthodontist will work 4 days a week, 45 weeks a year, you know, 7 weeks of vacation. They may have some 3-day weeks, some 5-day weeks, however that works out. But the national average of this avatar practice, and that's not The Last Airbender, by the way, that is the model for this average practice, 1.8 starts per day. So I want to make some assumptions so that, because whenever I talk about clinical efficiency, people say, oh, that's great. Well, you're probably doing shorter appointments, or not giving patients the amount of time in the clinic that they need, or the assistant's time, or you're pushing them like a factory to go through the appointments as quick as possible. So here's the assumptions that we built this off of. While in my office, we schedule an initial bonding or start of some kind for 60 minutes. I've used 75 minutes because I've had docs say, well, we schedule 90 for our initial bondings, or we're 100% braces, we don't do aligners, we schedule an hour and a half. And others say, well, we're half braces, half aligners, we do an hour for braces, 45 minutes for aligners. So 75 minutes is I think, fair, overly generous industry average for the amount of time it takes to put braces on or start some kind of treatment. A wire change or adjustment, we're going to use a 30-minute template as a schedule as an avatar for that. A lot of practices say, wow, that's really generous. We do 20-minute wire changes or adjustments. I don't think there's very many practices that schedule their regular wire change or adjustments for longer than 30 minutes. I think we'd all agree an emergency or an extra care, short visit of some kind, one wire change, place separators, whatever the case is. It's probably a 15-minute visit. We all probably have some kind of version of a pan and repo or herbs delivery or herbs removal or some other kind of longer appointment that's 45 minutes. And a D-band of 60 minutes. And I've had arguments about this. Some practices I've talked to take 2 hours and some do it in a half an hour. But we're going to work on a 60-minute average. So the point here is that our assumptions in how the clinic runs and our later assumptions on the schedule building are based on these numbers, so that hopefully no one's going to say, well, those are BS numbers because no one can work that fast. I think they're generous numbers. Notice here we only have 15-minute intervals, and I'll come back to that in the Zen scheduling discussion in part 2. So what I want to focus on now is, how does our clinical inefficiency affect our starts per day that we can do? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a practice. Doesn't matter what practice. So we're going to say that practice averages 24 visits to complete treatment. Well, in any treatment, you've got a start of some kind, right? So let's just talk braces here for a minute. You put braces on. And then at some point in time, you've got to get the braces off. So you have a D-band. And to do 24 visits, it means you have 22 progressive visits. Because remember, I'm only counting from the day braces go on to the day braces go off or come off. So if you're doing separators and, you know, fitting some band, I guess fitting the bands would count if you're still using bands. But every time I present this, people go, wow, who would take 22 progressive visits to complete treatment? Well, wait till you see what the averages are. So now let's take this avatar practice. Remember, 5 assistants, 4 columns of patients. So you'll see on here, this is a morning and an afternoon schedule. Let's see if I can annotate again. Let's see if it shows my mouse. Okay, so here's morning starting at 8 a.m. And notice in this schedule, I've even given 85 minutes for the bonding to be generous. BR would be a 60-minute D-band. No, and this is not how your schedule looks every day, right? You're not going to schedule these columns exactly like this. But my point is, for every start, you need a D-band. Again, if we're just assuming we're talking braces here. And if you need 22 adjustments or wire changes of some kind for every start, then you need 44 of these yellow visits. And so your day gets in 4 columns of patients from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I couldn't fit it all on the schedule. Your day is entirely filled of yellow, which is a non-productive visit. The production is the starts. And the reason I color our D-bands green is because you actually make money when you get braces off. You don't make money by doing progressive treatment. So that's why we colored them green. And of course, you've got some kind of pan and repo or 45-minute appointment in here. So remember, this is an average of 24 visits per start. 2 starts, there'll be 48 of these yellows, 2 D-bands, 2 pan and repos, okay? All right, now it goes. So at 24 visits, you can do 2 starts per day on that avatar office with 4 columns of patients. And if you're doing 2 starts a day, you're going to end up seeing 60 patients per day. Well, how do we calculate that? I can literally reverse engineer any practice if I know how many starts they do a year and how many how many days they're open, which tells me their starts per day, and how many patients they see a day in the clinic. I can tell how many appointments on average that practice has within a small range. So if you have 2 starts at 24 appointments per start, then you've got to see 48 clinical patients a day. It's math, because it's all averages. And so even though people say to me, well, the 2 starts get taken care of over 18 or 24 months or whatever else, but it doesn't matter. When you boil the math down, if you do 2 starts a day and it takes you 24 appointments, you're seeing 48 clinical patients a day on average. And so if you add in 12 combination of new patients, recall patients, retainer patients, emergencies don't count, because remember, that's included in the 24 appointments to finish treatment, then you're at 60 patients a day, which is that's pretty much the average, right? And that's a pretty good quality of life day. So that practice, doing 2 starts a day, 180 days a year, is 360 starts. So 2 times 180 is 360. Now let's go back to our average practice. The average practice had all these same numbers: 180 days a year, 60 patients per day, but was doing 340 starts. So if the average practice at 340 starts could do 2 starts per day, instead of, remember, they were at 1.8, that average orthodontist could take 10 extra days off a year. Improves quality of life, maybe reduces staff overhead. Maybe they bonus their team, an extra 10 days a year off for getting up to those 2 starts a day. And you're going to see where this comes back to the 19 visits on the national average, right? So the industry average as reported is 19 visits. But I think the number is actually 25 visits for the national average. And I'm going to show you through reverse engineering. So if the average office sees 60 patients per day and does 1.8 starts per day, and let's just assume a 50% conversion, then they need to see on average 3.6 new patient exams a day at a 50% conversion. And let's just estimate they see 8 recall patients per day. And if they do 2 retainer checks for each of those 1.8 starts, like I said, we're down to 1 retainer check per start. You're at 3.6 retainer checks a day. So take your 60 patients, subtract 3.6 new patient exams a day, subtract 8 recall patients a day and 3.6 retainer checks, and you're at 45 ongoing clinical progress patients per day. And if you're doing 45 clinical ongoing progress patients per day at 1.8 starts, that equals exactly 25 visits to complete treatment. So there's no way that the numbers that are reported are accurate. That's why I don't trust necessarily exactly the numbers that come out of a practice management software. That's why we monthly do our Excel spreadsheet for our D-band so we can track our numbers. And studies show that 73% of all statistics are made up. And I just made that up. Actually, I don't really believe the 19 visits. I think the industry average is closer to 24 or 25. Let's now talk about this same exact practice if they reduce the number of appointments to finish treatment down to 16 visits. Notice the start and D-band haven't changed, but 22 progressive visits have gone to 14. So now the same schedule, I want to reiterate again, this doesn't mean you have to do all your starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and all your D-bands during the middle of the day. They can be mixed around. I'm just filling them in the same template. For 3 starts, because you only need 14 each of the yellow visits per start, there's less yellow and more room for production, starts, and D-bands. So at 16 visits a day, this same practice could do 3 starts per day. Now, everyone then says to me, well, that's going to mean I got to see a whole bunch more patients a day, and I'm just unwilling to do that. But it doesn't. Let's do the math. Because if you're at 3 starts a day times 16 appointments per start, that's 48 patients. It's the same as 2 times 24. And if you add in, let's say, 12 new patient exams, recall, retainers, whatever other stuff you have in the schedule, it's roughly 60 patients per day. So that practice now is working the same number of days a year, seeing the same number of patients a day, and doing 50% more starts than the 2-start practice, same quality of life, and 50% greater production. 540 starts you could do if you had them available on 180 days a year. And then I get the question, but you know what? I just don't, my referral base, our marketing, we just don't have 540 starts. And so let's compare it back to the average practice. So if the average practice at 340 starts could do their treatment in 16 visits, they could do 3 starts a day, and they could shave 67 days off of the amount of days they have to work. That's like 5 days a month. I mean, what would you do with 5 extra days a month? I don't know. I'd probably be fishing or out in the woods, or I don't know, riding my bike, or working on my business and developing systems, working with my team, enhancing and growing and developing my marketing and my relationship with my referrals, and then I always hear, well, so if you were only doing 113 days a year, are you going to pay your team for the rest? Well, maybe you pay them for all of the rest of the days that you worked. And, but remember, your overhead stayed the same, but your quality of life went up. So effectively, what you make per year, you're making more per day than you did before. Or maybe your team wants to take more time off without pay. I don't know. You can figure those parts out. But by reducing from 24 visits to 16 visits, you could either grow your practice to 540 starts with no change in the quality of life of patients seen per day, or you could reduce the number of days you want to work, or probably some hybrid between that. So my goal in my practice is 12 visits, right? This is tough because you get one start and one D-band, and so you only have 10 progressive visits to complete treatment. Now remember, this is just for full treatment braces, which I would, again, argue is still a majority of what orthodontists do in the profession. You know, and it was interesting because at one point in time, our Align regional manager, when I was using Align, our Align regional manager came in and said, you know, our average Align orthodontist is doing treatment in about 11 to 12 visits. So you could really save a lot of time in your schedule if you just switch all of your braces cases to aligners. And I said, yeah, maybe, except my overhead goes up $1,000 per case. And, you know, and you want to see my D-band metrics because we're at 12 visits for braces. So, so for me, you know, it's kind of a wash. You'll see my aligner metrics a little bit later on in this presentation, but my goal is 12 visits. And there's actually some method to this madness. All right, looking at the schedule, same template we talked about before. At 12 visits to complete treatment, you only need 10 of those yellow appointments for every start. So if you're doing 4 starts and 4 D-bands, you only need 40 of those yellow visits. So there's less yellow and more production. And at 12 visits, the same orthodontist 180 days a year with 4 columns of patients could do 4 starts a day. And guess what? They're not any busier. I think you're getting the point. 12 appointments times 4 starts is 48 patients. It's the same number of patients as the orthodontist doing 2 starts at 24 appointments. Yeah, there's more of the longer appointments, but you'll see how that fits into the schedule a little bit later. So quality of life is still the same. And the orthodontist doing 4 starts per day at 180 days could do 720 starts. That's the rockin' practice, right? Do the math on that real quick. 5K per average start, 720, you know, 3.6 in production, working 180 days a year. And for those who say they don't have more starts available in their community, well, if you were able to do 4 starts per day, because you've already got all the resources there. You got the office, you got the chairs, you got 4 columns of patients, you have 5 assistants, you're not changing your overhead. You could actually work 85 days. You could take 95 more days out of the clinic a year. And my hope would be that you would use some of those to keep working with your team on enhancing your efficiency, training, reviewing treatment plans, reviewing what we could do better at each appointment for each patient. So let's take it to an extreme. Let's go to the ridiculous. Imagine if an orthodontic company could come up with an orthodontic treatment that you put braces on and some period of time later you take braces off. I don't care what the interval is, a year, 2 years, 8 months. There's no progressive visits. And even with these overly generous 85-minute bonding appointments, you can do 12 starts a day. And think about how happy all the parents would be because all the kids could get their braces off in the afternoon. And all you would need are new patient exams and recall. I mean, you actually need more treatment coordinators to do that. But guess what? You're still seeing 60 patients a day. 2 appointments times 12 starts is 24 patients. Actually, now you need 36 for new patients, recalls. You're doing less clinical stuff because there's no yellow. There's no yellow we color it yellow in our office. There's no yellow that's crushing us. And you can do 2,160 starts on 180 days a year. That's like a $12 million practice. So go for it. Maybe the orthodontic companies will develop the technology that allows us to do that. Or the average practice can work 34 days and continue doing 340 starts, right? 12 starts a day times 34 days. That math doesn't work. And it's probably 30 days either way. Of course, it's ridiculous, but it shows the power of fewer visits to complete treatment. All right, so fewer visits equals more starts and or fewer days worked. And one thing I left out of this, right, it's this algorithm. If you can do your treatment in fewer visits, you can have one of 3 things or a combination of all of the above. You can do more starts on the same schedule. You could work fewer days and do the same number of starts, or you could do the same number of starts and the same number of days and see fewer patients a day. But what probably will happen is this. The more you focus on your clinical efficiency, you'll be able to reduce the number of days you want to work. You'll be able to reduce the number of patients you see a day, and you'll be able to grow your practice. And, you know, a little story for myself. So when I started my own practice about 13 years ago, after a year of being a stay-at-home dad, and started my practice, I said, when I go back, I only want to see patients 3 days a week. And so 3 days a week times 50 weeks a year is 150 days a year. And actually, with lecturing and travel and vacations, we actually got that down to about 130 days a year. And we were able to grow the practice to doing 6 starts a day with 6 columns of patients and 7 assistants. So doing 900 starts on roughly 900 starts on roughly 130 days a year. And that was with seeing about 95 patients a day. And that's, to me, like the epitome of balance between number of days in the office, the busyness of the days, the production of the business, and the quality of life. But if we're inefficient, more visits equals more patients per day, or more days worked, or just more everything else. So that's why number of visits is my number one key metric. And that's why it blows me away when I talk with folks and 95% of the time, or when I do a presentation and I ask this question, who measures how many appointments it takes them to finish treatment? Only 5% of people raise their hands. And yet most orthodontists are frustrated with the number of patients they're seeing, or the number of days they want to work, or their quality of life. And so I think we all need to take the bull by the horns and be better at learning and this will be part 2, another webinar, but how do we do that mechanically? How do we motivate patients, right? How do we work with our team? How do we make the clinic flow smoothly? There's more for that later. So let's talk about why I came up with 12 visits. Number one, I thought it was a reasonable number of visits to be able to complete treatment on average. And number two, the method behind the madness is actually the scheduling. So, because I've had people go, well, it just doesn't, the numbers don't work. But let's go back to the averages we talked about before. If you schedule an initial bonding for 75 minutes, okay, so you have one 75-minute appointment. And if you have, well, let me go ahead. You've got one D-band, that's 60 minutes. Well, remember, you've got 10 appointments in between that. 1 or 2 of them might be emergencies, 1 might be a pan repo, and 8 of them might be 30-minute wire changes or adjustments or whatever progressive type of appointment you want to do. If you add all of those appointments up, it totals 7.25 hours. And most of us work somewhere between a 7 and 8 hour day. And so what that means is if you can do everything from start to finish for a single patient in 7.25 hours of chair time, then one assistant can do the treatment for an entire course of treatment for a patient in 1 day. And so that's our goal, is 1 start per day per assistant. But if you go back to that example where there were 24 visits, then you were doing a half a start per day per assistant column, because there were 2 starts and 4 columns of patients. And our goal is 1 start per day. And so when we got to the point where we were doing 130 days a year and 6 starts a day, this is basically what our schedule template contained. I want to reiterate, this wasn't our schedule. We didn't start it up at 8 o'clock in the morning with 6 bondings across the schedule. But what we had to do was move these around in the schedule so that I had starts. So, you know, let's assume you need 3 leveling wires. So you do 6 starts, and then and then 8 weeks later you do 2 0-8s, and then 8 weeks later or 6 weeks later you do 6 14-25s, and then 18-25s. And then maybe you have an emergency visit in there, and then you do your pan and repo at 11 o'clock. And then 11:45 and 12:15, you do wire change. You have an extra emergency appointment. And then a couple of the later adjustments or wire bends or whatever you need to finish it up. And then you do your D-bands and you have an extra retainer evaluation because that's the way it fits in the schedule. And so the point here is, yeah, mix these appointments up however you want in the schedule template. And by the way, 6 starts a day, if you're at 75% conversion, you only need 8 exams a day. And, you know, and this was with our exams, we're now down to 45 minutes, but here we had 5 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, plus a couple of recall readies, plus all of our recall visits, which we don't see in the clinic, we see with a treatment coordinator in a private office. So 12 visits is 1 start per day per assistant column. Take-home message: reducing the number of visits to complete treatment reduces the work we have to do for each start. I think we get it. Okay, so we covered the number of visits and how that impacts starts per day and how that can allow you to have more starts or fewer days or bigger production. Now we're going to go on to part 2. Let's see, we are about 45 minutes in. We're right on target. Good. Part 2. You know, I'm often asked, okay, great. Well, how do you even begin to develop a schedule? You know, I've worked with consultants over the years. There's a lot of great ones, and a lot of what I've learned from the consultants. And those of you who are seeing this, you know who you are. But I'm here to say that I think if you do some basic homework and you're willing to be creative, you can figure out the own ideal schedule for yourself. It just takes a little bit of work. And we're going to talk about our Zen scheduling. And that's this to the south here, the schedule. How do we build it? What do we need for number of visits by treatment type? How many assistants do we need? You know, do we have enough chairs in our clinic? Or if we're growing, do we need to redesign our space or build a new space? And then a little bit of in reality, right? This is why I no longer use a doctor time schedule, because a doctor time schedule in theory is like Tetris. So you've got this patient has 5 minutes of doctor time at this time, and then this one, and they're stacked with the doctor time. But then what happens when a patient comes in 5 minutes late and another patient comes in 5 minutes early? And one assistant is 5 minutes faster at getting ready for the doctor time, and one assistant is 5 minutes slower. You can very well end up with all these doctor times lining up. And then what you have is this clinical argument of, wait, my doctor time's first. Yeah, but Susie came in early. And so what we realized, by the way, I used to use doctor time. What we realized is we made decisions clinically based on where it was the most effective next place for the doctor to go. And I don't really have time in this presentation to cover it, but I'll give you a quick example. Let's say a patient, there are 2 assistants calling. One is to put a bracket back on that came off for an extra care visit. And the other one has been waiting for 5 minutes for you, but it's a direct bond 7 to 7. Which one do you go to first? Well, some practices say, you know, go to the direct bond because the start, because they're a new patient. But the argument would be by going to that, which takes us about 8 to 9 minutes to put on 7 to 7 brackets. And if you want to see how to do it fast, you watch Jamie's presentation. They're faster than we are. Or do you go to the one that takes you 30 seconds to put the bracket back on? Well, if you go to the bonding, the full treatment bonding, then the other patient has to wait however long it takes you to put those brackets on. Whereas if you go to the shorter one, you're only delaying the longer one by that small amount of time. We don't really have time to talk about that today. So here's the Zen scheduling rules. Rule number 1, we only have 4 clinical appointment types in our schedule: 15, 30, 45, and 60. Everything must fit into those templates, okay? Number 2, patients can be scheduled in any appointment based on how long the assistant and doctor expect that next visit to take, all right? So you could have a 15-minute D-band because it's an upper 1 arch, phase 1, where the Hawley retainer has already been made by the lab. How long does that take? Brackets off, remove resin, fit the retainer, take some pictures, out of there. Or you could have a 60-minute adjustment. It's upper lower wires, and you've got to remove turbos, and it's a special needs patient with a helicopter mom that asks a lot of questions, and that could be a 60-minute. Now, the more you move patients in and out of those, the more it can affect the building of your schedule. And so that's why we have number 3 and 4. Procedure codes don't link to specific appointments, specific appointment templates. Because let's say you had a 45-minute Pan-Repo and a 45-minute herpes delivery, but the herpes delivery had 10 minutes of doctor time here, and the Pan-Repo had 5 and 5 here and here, then, and you might only do 3 Pan-Repos a day and 1 herpes delivery a week. So every time you put a herpes delivery in the schedule that doesn't get used, it's a wasted spot. But if they were just 45s and the patient, whether it's a Pan-Repo or a herpes delivery, was scheduled in that 45, then your clinical team has to be nimble enough and agile enough and flexible enough and creative enough to help you figure out how to do it. So if you have a schedule that has appointment templates that are linked to a specific appointment type, and you see those are going unused, in other words, you're wasting an appointment time in the schedule, you should consider looking at doing Zen scheduling and having your clinic be more flexible. And then the 4th thing is we change the color of appointment to the type of the procedure. So because our yellow is our adjustment, if we scheduled a 60, in that previous example, we scheduled a 60-minute adjustment in a very difficult adult patient who's a nuclear engineer that wants this tooth tweaked and that tooth tweaked. And when I'm in my car taking a selfie, driving on the highway, and I look at this angle and this tooth is slightly off from this tooth, that might be a yellow 60, right? But the phase 1 arch D-band in a 15 would be green because our D-bands are green. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So how do you actually build a schedule? In order to do this, you've got to know your average number of visits to complete treatment. So people say, well, you're focusing on average number of visits, yeah, hyper efficient. We just don't want to have to stress that much about it. But how do you even know how to build a scheduling template if you don't know these things? So let's follow it. This is why a monthly D-band spreadsheet is critical to the understanding of the needs of your clinic. And here's how you're going to do it, all right? You're going to calculate your starts by treatment type. How many did you do in 2019? And for us, we really have 3 categories. We have phase 1, full treatment and aligners, all right? Then in our D-band spreadsheet, we're going to evaluate the number of visits to finish treatment per treatment type, all right? And this is all in words. I'm going to show it in numbers in a minute. Then we're going to calculate the total number of each appointment type needed, plan for growth, and build a schedule. And this will, I'm telling you right now, this will allow you to not pay a consultant $5,000 to $10,000 to build you a schedule that you can do in a relatively short amount of time on your own and with your practice manager or administrative coordinator with some accurate treatment metrics and a little creativity. All right. So here's an example from our 2019 numbers, how we were building our 2020 schedule. Now, to be really clear, it's not exactly our 2019 numbers because you can't wait until December 31st to build your 2020 schedule. So my practice manager and I do this about every 6 months to see if we need to redesign our schedule templates for the offices. So this is full treatment braces, and we were doing about from mid-2018 to mid-2019, we looked at it over a 12-month period. We were doing about 600 full treatment starts with braces. And during that time, our average number of visits was 12.9. You've seen we've come down. We had an associate, now partner, Dr. Mike, joined us 3.5 years ago. We were learning to work together, learning to co-treat together. There were some things we had to do to really enhance our effectiveness of co-treatment of patients, and we've gotten better together, and that's been really impressive. And I'm super impressed with him, by the way, in being able to maintain this 12 appointment average with like 3 years of experience. I certainly couldn't have done that even 15 years into being an orthodontist. So at 12.9 visits, what we're going to do is this, right? my team and I defined, which I already did for you for braces, what do 12 visits on average look like? Braces on, wire change, maybe an emergency, a wire change, pan and repo, wire change, adjustment, maybe another emergency somewhere, another adjustment, and a D-band. And we defined what those appointments typically went in. So now what we said is, look, we need a 60 and a 60. Let's see if the annotate will work here. Okay, so the bonding is a 60, and the D-band is the 60. Does that work? Oh, okay. The bonding is, I haven't done a presentation on Zoom yet, so I'm still trying to work out the annotations, but the bonding is a 60, and the D-band is a 60, so we need 2 times 60 times 600 starts is 1,200 60s, all right? We have on average 1 pan and repo. Now, look, we do have herpes cases that require another 45. We have some patients that are straightforward cases and they don't require a pan and repo. So we assume this on average, 1 times 45 times 600 starts. And then 8 times 30s times 600 starts is 4,800, and 2 15s is 1,200. Let's go on to phase 1. Now, for clarity in phase 1, we don't use expanders, we don't do separators, we don't, and it's not like scan for lab appliance, place separators, deliver lab appliance, check expander, put some braces on, do, 2x4s. We typically bracket upper and lower 6 to 6. It's a whole nother discussion for another time. But we average 9 visits from start to finish for our phase 1. Estimated treatment time 11.66, actual 11.45. With 9 appointments to finish treatment. A couple extra cares or emergencies because you got 2x4s or you've got coil springs and you're making space. That's why we bond a lot of primary teeth. Initial bonding 60 minutes, phase 1 D-band 30 minutes because we have the Hawleys already made. And so we went through with the clinical team and defined what do those 9 visits look like on average. And what are the time slots for those? And then you multiply it by 200 phase 1 starts. We did the same thing for aligners. You'll notice our aligner treatment time actual is behind our estimate. And you could make some judgments on that. Maybe I needed to be a better aligner orthodontist, which I can argue that I did. Which is why Dr. Mike is now taking over the aligner treatments in our practice, primarily in the designs, and we're getting this down. He's doing better at that than I was, but averaging 9 visits. So we were actually more efficient than our Align regional manager told us we could be, but still the delta between 9 and 12 is not that much that I need to put a lot of my braces patients into aligners for the added cost. Unless they want aligners, then that's a different story. So again, go through what an aligner treatment looks like. Delivery, progress, maybe 1 emergency or so, or half. Progress visit, remove attachments. Certainly, this is where aligners have benefit. You see, there is less time involved with doing aligners. If you were to add this up, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, roughly 4 hours, where the braces were 7.25. So I see a number of doctors that are going more towards aligners because their clinic is bogged down and they realize that aligners will take them less clinical time, but it does take them more setup time, more aligner gremlins that show up on Monday morning and Sunday night that need to be approved for the refinements and everything else. And certainly an added increased cost to the initial overhead. Another reason why OrthoFI is super beneficial, because if you're an aligner practice that's growing in aligners and you've got this VIG from the aligner companies for, let's call it $1,000 to $1,500, are you asking your patients to cover your aligner down payment? And if you're asking for, say, $2,000 down, you're reducing your conversion on those aligner patients. Now, this isn't really the area, I mean, Jamie has in his presentation to talk about, so I'll let him cover that. But yes, we do believe aligners reduces the amount of time that you need clinically to finish a case. But if you have available chair time, like as an example, tomorrow we have openings for D-bands tomorrow if someone needs to get in, and openings for starts and openings for adjustments, even in the afternoon. It's part of staying on top of the flywheel of clinical efficiency. But we're talking about scheduling. So 600 braces, full treatment, 200 phase 1, 200 aligners, 1,000-star practice. And with Dr. Mike on, I'm not at 130 days anymore. We're doing 200 days between us. So 1,000 starts. Now we add this up across. So we add up all the 60s, all the 45s, all the 30s, and all the 15s we need. And we know in a given year how many appointments we need of each appointment type, template, 60, 45, 30, 15. And then you're going to add in whatever your expected growth is. I mean, heck, if you're growing 30%, then add 30% to these numbers. If you're growing at 5%, add 5%. We typically will add 10 to 15% and create a buffer. And so in our practice for 2020, we needed this many of each of these visits. And if we're doing 17 days a month or 200 days a year, you can basically divide so 1540 divided by 200 days a year, and it's actually, we've cut that down to about 193, and that's 8 60s per day and 5 45s per day. And if you add these up on the next slide, that adds up to a total of 64 clinical appointments per day, plus our new patients and recalls and retainer evaluations. Puts us at about 85 patients a day. And our number pretty consistently averages about 90. So these numbers are working out. So let's go back to math. Remember, you cancel out the numerator and denominator when you have the same value in there. So 1,000 starts per year at 200 days per year, that's 5 starts per day. Back to my metric number 2. And so reverse engineering 5 starts per day times 12 visits per start. And actually the number would be a little bit below that, right? Because if I go back, we're averaging 13 visits for full treatment, which is 60% of our treatment, and 9 visits for phase 1 and 9.3 for aligners. So our blended average is probably about 11.3 clinical visits per day, 11.4. But that's 60 clinical visits per day. So 5 times 12 is 60. And notice this comes very close to equaling what we designed for our practice based on what we expected to do for a 1,000-star practice with the capacity for 10% growth. So 60 plus 10% is 64. It'd be 66, but you're following me. All right. And so with 6 columns of patients, we've got our 6 starts per day, our adjustments, our extra cares, our pay and repo, and then going into the afternoon. That's what a schedule that has all of the required visits in it looks like. All right, then scheduling. Talking about changing the color of appointment to the type of the procedure, right? So we use blue for bonding, yellow for wire change, red for extra care, or emergency green for D-band. And my team has decided to add some other colors that I can't see for like scans, because we have scanner as a rate limiting step, or a couple of other types of appointments. But this is what our schedule ends up looking like. We use 5-minute intervals. Okay, so the schedule's on 5 minutes. And I remember the best argument I ever had from a former employee of mine in my former practice is, we don't want to use 5-minute intervals, because then when we print the computer schedule out so we can have it on our desk, it's 5 pages instead of 2. And the best one I've heard from doctors is, well, I don't want to go to 5-minute appointment intervals because I don't want to have to see patients every 5 minutes. And the key to 5-minute intervals is that if you have a 15-minute appointment on 5-minute intervals, it's 3 units of time. If you have a 30-minute, it's 10 units of time. It does allow those practices who want to use 10-minute appointments or 20-minute appointments or 40-minute appointments to be able to do that, where a 15-minute interval, you can't have a 10 or a 20-minute appointment. It also allows us, given our clinical assistants, to leave 5 or 10-minute gaps in between patients if we're building a schedule for an assistant and they're training and they need more time, or if we have an expectation for time to turn the chair or whatever else. We've since gone to eliminating those small gaps. Let's see if I can show this. These small gaps, we've gone to eliminating those because we now have a steri tech to help out turning chairs at the end of the visit so they can get the next patient in. All right, so again, 5-minute intervals, no doctor time. And so we go to, and you'll see we have this is a full treatment bonding, a phase 1 bonding, a full treatment bonding, and there's other things that are along the way in here. And our assistants will call the doctor, and our clinical coordinator, Caitlin, will direct the doctor or doctors to the next appropriate chair based on her evaluation of what's going on in the clinic. So the clinical reality is, how do we manage the flow without doctor time or specific templates? And let's see if this will work with the audio. I hope it will. This is our clinical schedule at 3:35 in the afternoon. You can see there's 4 chairs calling for me. This was when we had a 7, or this is in our 7-chair London office. We have a 9-chair office as well. You can see that we have an OBS patient in there, and the new patient is not in yet. This is
so this is what we have going on with flow right now. We have 2 patients who showed up, 1 patient that showed up a little bit late for their 3:30. We were getting prepared to take in the 3:45s, and both of these showed up. Our scanner is being used right now, so I'm having the doctor go to chair 7 first to take care of this patient so they can get the scan done to take this 3:40 in. I'm going to take this patient at this open chair right here. I'm having our next assistant take this 3:45 who is here early at this chair here, which will knock those 3 appointments off. And then the other 2 are also early 3:45s, and right now it is 3:38. So the next couple chairs should clear out and we'll be right back on time for 3:45.
Right, so what you see there is, you know, we have an amazing clinical coordinator in Caitlin, but looking at this, you know, we have 7 clinical chairs. There's 4 that are calling for me, and we have a whole bunch of patients that have come in early. So that's when the stress begins, right? Because your reception area is building up, and she's making the decision that the rate limiting step here, by the way, if you see where doctor is here, that means the doctor is in OBS talking to the patient who's a recall. And so when the doctor comes out of there, Caitlin is going to radio the order of chairs that we need to go to. So she'll say she'll just say 7, I don't know, whatever's next, 764. And so the doctor will know that the order she wants the doctor to go is from chair 7 to clear out the scan patient so we can get the next scan in, because we have 1 scanner in the office. And that's a rate limiting step. And we have 2 open chairs, which when she gets done with what she's doing, she'll call the next patient in, and the next available assistant will call the next patient in after that. You know, it's really, we've tried to video this like in real world, but it's hard to understand everything that's going on. We have 1 camera view. We've actually strapped a camera to Caitlin's forehead and had her walk around the clinic, but it's hard to really know everything that's going on. This is probably the best example of how we do it, and we do it with a team approach, what we call a beehive mentality. And it's a culture of donating time. And so what do we mean by that? And it's kind of like a red light, green light. And so if there is an assistant who is at a red light, meaning they can't progress till the doctor is there, and the doctor is off doing something else, I don't know, you know, it might be, they might be in a recall or a new patient exam, or they might be putting braces on. Or I hope it's not your case, doctor. If it is, look in the mirror that you're delaying your clinical effectiveness because you're checking your stocks or your Facebook or something else. But anyway, if the doctor is otherwise indisposed and an assistant is at a red light and can't make progress, then how does that assistant make him or herself valuable? And so here's the example. I'm sitting here talking with a patient and his mother, and Caitlin, our clinical coordinator. And you'll notice, let's again see if this annotate works here. My mouse disappeared. There it is. Nope, it disappeared altogether. Okay, well, I'm not working well with a Zoom on this. Anyway, so if doctor is sitting with patient and assistant talking to mother, you'll notice that in the other chair you can see there that Nicole is standing up to help Krista work on placing turbos. In our office, we allow the assistants to place turbos. The doctor can come over and check them, articulate, and modify with a high speed as needed. But Nicole was here in the empty seat behind Caitlin at chair 3. Well, if I'm clearly spending time talking to a patient and the mother, and she's quote unquote waiting for me, then she can be helpful to help out another assistant, make her treatment progress quicker. This is donating time. And donating time is not a core of the book of the culture code, but if you want to learn something about the secrets of highly successful groups, I highly recommend this book by Daniel Coyle called The Culture Code. Read it a number of times, and the culture of the team and the culture code will be part of my phase 2 presentation when we come around to that again in the winter or spring. Here's another example. Bianca, who's smiling at the camera there, is working on a patient, but Sandy, who is looking at the computer, is, by the way, these are pre-COVID photos, otherwise they would have their masks on all the time. Sandy, who is waiting, quote unquote, waiting for a doctor to make her next progress with a patient, is now typing up Bianca's chart. So Bianca can continue working while not posing for the camera because Sandy is typing up her chart. Or Bianca, who photobombed here, Nicole helping Emily, who is preparing a patient for full bonding, and we're working with 2 assistants to prepare for the full bonding. Not that we have a whole bunch of extra assistants, but Nicole is waiting for a doctor to come over to her chair and is utilizing her time or donating her time to help make Emily's preparation of that bonding much quicker. Or probably one of my favorite photos from a little bit back in the day, we have 7 chairs in the clinic, and we have 7 patients on flow, and 2 chairs just vacated. And this is Chrissy, our practice manager, and Mary, our former treatment coordinator before she retired after her 2nd child. Mary, you can come back whenever you want. But how often do you have your practice manager and your lead treatment coordinator sterilizing and turning chairs to keep the clinic moving? In our team, the Hive mentality is about doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. And that includes, if I'm available, turning a chair to keep the clinic moving. But this is practice manager and treatment coordinator. Treatment coordinator is waiting for the doctor to finish doing something before she can brief him, so she's turning a chair. And practice manager just gets up from whatever she's doing to come and help that out. All right, so let's see where we are on time. I think we're going to finish a little bit early here, folks, which will leave us time for question and answer in the live session. But we've covered, all right, number of visits. Why is the number of visits important to complete treatment? Starts per day. The last section we talked about scheduling. How do you build it? How do you design it? How many assistants do you need? And then what happens in the reality without doctor time schedule, and how do you do decision making? In the next section, which we will do at a later date, I'm going to give you a preview of it. We'll talk about the importance of living up to the promises we make our patients, which to me is on-time completion of treatment. And I'm going to share with you some of the new metrics we use to measure your promises to your patients. And so the part 3 will cover the north and west sections of this minefield that is my mind, talking about mechanics and motivation of patients, what's in it for the patient to comply with you, looking forward at treatment and using photos to do everything you can at each visit and shorten treatment time and why shorter treatment time is better. But let's give you a little bit of a preview of that. One of the things we're going to talk about in the next presentation is the power of now. You know, a lot of us are doing same-day starts in our practice, right? Patient comes in, new patient exam, x-ray and photos right away. Doctor treatment plans the patient immediately, reviews the treatment plan with OrthoFI, can review the finances because all the paperwork is done ahead of schedule, review the finances, sign the paperwork, and get their braces on at the same appointment. And we can do all that without being pushy, if you've seen Jamie Reynolds' presentation. But, you know, power of now for me is about shorter treatment times, fewer visits. Really, the power of now is doing everything at each visit. Not only same-day starts, but even same-day D-bands when the patient is ready to finish treatment. And so my key metric number 3 really is built around what I'll call the happiness metric. And that to me is about treatment time. It makes me happy to finish patients on time, and it makes patients happy to get finished on time. It makes your admin team happy to have patients finished on time. And even more than the marketing. And I'll show you in the next segment of this how treatment time directly impacts your administrative workload. So stay tuned for that. Did you get that? Treatment time in the clinic has its biggest impact on your administrative workload. You're going to want to watch that one. What does shorter treatment times mean to me? Well, it means happier patients. Typically, it'll mean fewer appointments. And the shorter your treatment time, the more motivation your patients have, better oral hygiene, fewer decalcifications. They have better compliance, or as we call it, participation, with elastics, braces, aligners. And more patient motivation means shorter treatment times, and then the cycle continues. And here's the biggest tip I'm going to give docs, all right? Please, please, please stop giving your patients a range for treatment time. Please stop doing the 18 to 24 months. And the reason is the patient hears 18 months and the doctor and the team plan for 24 months. So automatically we are failing our patients by 6 months when we give them a treatment time. Tell them how many months you think it's going to take and then live up to it, all right? If you're a range person, then pick an average, 21, and work towards getting done in 21. If you're not confident of the ability to do that, then tell them 24, but at least you set the expectations properly. As you can see in our practice, our typical average braces estimate is around 18 to 19 months. And we finish just slightly ahead of that. This is a fail. It's setting us up for failed ability, for the inability to live up to the expectations we've set for our patients, or more importantly, the promises we've set. Because I promise you that if you tell a patient 18 to 24 months, they're thinking 18. If you don't believe me, imagine if you're redoing your kitchen and you have to live cooking in a microwave and washing your dishes in a bathroom sink. And your contractor tells you the kitchen will be done in 6 to 10 weeks. You're thinking it's going to be 6 weeks and hoping it's not going to be 10. And between week 6 and 10, you're really starting to get frustrated. So think about that. We're going to talk about estimated versus actual treatment time and why this is important on our D-band spreadsheet. To me, these should be equal on average. In fact, it's better even if your actual treatment time is a little less than your treatment time. Now, you know, when we do this, oh, that slide disappeared. Anyway, when we do our D-band spreadsheet, you'll notice that we had some patients finishing 5, 6, 7, 8 months ahead of treatment time. And the number one thing that Jamie and I have heard over the years is, well, great, so you told them 24 months and you finished in 18. Aren't they going to not pay you for the remainder of treatment? I think we spent a lot of time discussing that, but what I would say is that's another benefit of OrthoFI, because OrthoFI is going to work to ensure that the financial arrangement as it was set up prior to treatment is independent of treatment time. And so that's something that you should consider investigating with OrthoFI. If your treatment times are long because your average financing term is long, and your concern is that if your treatment doesn't equal your financing, you won't get paid the remaining amount, I think you ought to look into OrthoFI. All right. And we're going to have our treatment time in actuality equal our estimate, or be better if we can, not by overestimating, not by being the doctor who goes, yeah, 5 years, and then you finish in 2, because you're probably going to lose patients to the orthodontist down the road who's not estimating 5 years, but is telling them 2, or worse yet, they're telling them 12 months and then finishing in 24. That's a short-term win for doctors. I've experienced that before, because patients start to catch on to that and realize that they're telling them a shorter time to get them in the door, but then they can't actually close the deal on that, which is why I think estimate and actual should be pretty close and not necessarily correlated to finance treatment time. And in the next set of the presentation, we're going to focus on how we do this by mechanics and motivation. So we'll be discussing an upcoming webinar. So listen, everybody, thank you. We did that in about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe a little bit more, which will leave us sometimes time for questions and answers. 3 metrics: number of visits to complete treatment, starts per day, because I was thinking about the happiness metric, which is your average treatment time by treatment type. And we're going to talk about that later. So that's all we got for you tonight. I hope everybody, if you have any questions, we're going to answer them in the question and answer session. And if you have any interest in OrthoFI, please contact your OrthoFI rep and they can go ahead and do a presentation for you. Thank you. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. So let's see. I know we got Jeff, Dr. Kozlowski, and Dr. Reynolds both on here as well. And we will jump in here to the Q&A. So got a bunch of questions that came in. We are also, as we know, going to be raffling off a phone soap for everybody that attended tonight. So we're going to do that here in just a minute. And if you have any questions that you didn't ask but come to you, just feel free to type them in and we'll make sure that they get asked. So I'll start off with one for both of you guys. This is from Dr. Jarek Petros. How long are your new patient exam appointments, and what specifically do you allocate for each minute of the exam? For example, first 20 minutes, records, etc.
Kaz, you want to take that? We're both 45. How's that?
Kaz, I believe you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
With reverb.
No, you're good.
Okay. So we do 45-minute exams. The treatment coordinator does ICAT and photos in about the first 10 minutes, and then spends about 5 minutes with the patient, comes out and briefs the doctor. We spend 2-3 minutes discussing not only the treatment of the case, but any of the background information that's pertinent to making a decision on how to proceed with treatment. And so the doctor will go in about 15 to 20 minutes into the exam and hopefully get out within 5 minutes or less, or get a boot in the rear end. And then the treatment coordinator has 25 minutes to do the financials and cover everything else needed if the patient's ready to start. Interestingly enough, quick side note, I spend more time in exams that are not ready to start than I spend in exams that are ready to start. So I want to build that relationship, communicate, talk about what the future brings, what we're looking for over progressive recall visits to build value in that. The ones that are ready to start, especially when the treatment coordinators are good, they say, hey, I don't actually need you to come in. Susie's going to start with her braces today. And I'll come in and say, hey, Susie, I heard you're ready to start with your braces today. I know Sarah's going to cover everything with you. Do you have any questions? And a lot of times they say, nope, let's get our braces on. And you're like, all right, well, pre-COVID, high five, air five. And then we go back to run the clinic.
Awesome.
You know, I think it's important to know when you think about that question is what percentage of patients do you recommend treatment for your new patients? So, you know, if you recommend treatment on everyone versus if you recommend treatment on half the people or 3/4 or a quarter, in our office it's about 50-50. So the people that come in that are ready for treatment recommend treatment and the rest of them go on recall. So that's important to know first. If you're recommending treatment on almost everyone, then you'll need more time for the treatment coordinator to do the sales process, where if you're not recommending treatment and they go into recall, then that sort of ends the exam, and that part that goes into like going over the financials and signing the contract or whatnot is not necessary. So I think you have to think about it like the airlines do a bit. It's not an exact science. So you don't know when the patient who's ready for start is going to come in during the day. You don't know which patients are going to show up or not show up, which seems like an increasingly more people are rescheduling these days. So you can make it an hour and a half, hour, 15 minutes, 45, 30 minutes. And the reality is if you recommend treatment, it's going to go longer. And if you don't recommend treatment, it's going to go shorter. So I think 45 minutes is a little too long for putting people on recall, and not long enough for that adult patient that has a lot of questions that's going to try to do the start that day. And so you kind of, you know, your team, right? Exactly. Kaz is pointing at that one tooth, right? So your team is going to focus on the one or two that go really long and blow up the schedule. You're going to probably focus on the ones that you put on recall or the ones that don't show up, and then you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs. And so what you have to do is kind of come up with a plan based around your goals for how many starts that you want. And then you can kind of back into that number by, you know, what percentage of people that you put on recall and what amount of people that you have that don't show up for their appointments. And then you can back into both how many exams you need that day and how long they should be. That makes any sense. It's a little more complicated of an answer than just 45 minutes and spend 10 minutes taking photos and 5 minutes on the x-ray.
Excellent. And so this next one's for both of you. I'll ask Dr. Reynolds to lead here first, but you guys have both been able to really reinvent your practices, you know, over the years to really go from good to great. And, you know, that takes time, that takes effort, takes focus, and it's not easy to do. So how have you been able to do that? How have you been able to reinvent your practice to really, like I said, go from good to great?
You know, that probably is a whole several-hour lecture in and of itself. I think, you know, in the social media culture of today, there's a lot of, it makes everything seem a lot easier than it is. You know, sort of the metaphor that, you know, that I like to use is how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So I think it's to set a goal that's anything more than, you know, 20% above where you are now in performance is unrealistic and will probably do your practice more harm than good to grow that quickly anyway. You know, Jim Collins has written a number of great books, and he talks about, you know, 20% growth being like the 20-mile march that a lot of the really staying power companies have done over time. They've aimed for that 15 to 20% growth on an annual basis. So I think the first thing is, you know, set reasonable goals. Don't try to conquer Rome in a day. None of us have. And I know the times in my practice when we've grown faster than 20%, things get really turbulent and you almost have to plateau for a while and get everything to settle down and fix stuff because hypergrowth does tend to break things. The second thing I would say is you kind of got to narrow your focus. So Kaz did a really great job of giving you a few key metrics to focus on. from a sales perspective, for me, it's kept new patient exams and your TRC, your conversion percentage. So if you cobble those metrics together, you got 4 or 5 to look at. And so I would say near your focus. I know this is an OrthoFI sponsored event and whatnot, and this may seem like the company line, but, collections and insurance stuff, specifically collections, it takes huge amounts of effort. And the best possible outcome from collections activity is you get paid for the work that you've already done. And the worst outcome is that your, financial coordinator is grouchy and she pisses off the patient and they get mad at you for not paying you the money they owe you anyway. And it's bad for business. So not having to focus on the insurance and the collections or the mundane activities has allowed me to focus on the things that grow the business, which is marketing, sales, and customer service experience. And so we've been really focused on those things for maybe the last 6 or 7 years. And that's really what's allowed us to grow the most, is really that focus on the things that grow rather than kind of the rear view mirror aspect of the practice. So hopefully that makes sense.
Jeff, you're on mute. There you go.
I'm on my phone for the audio, so I can hear myself speaking in the background. Can't we just get rid of this COVID thing and go back to doing things in person? I would say it's people. And so the thing that I've learned the most in the last probably 1.5 to 2 years is that we doctors tend to be the major rate limiting step to any development in our practice. And we just don't want to take our hands off of things, and people can't do things as good as we can. But I would argue that if you have a team of 15 people, then 15 people that are well-trained and supported and trusted will do way more for you and your business than you would ever do on your own. And so my focus in the last 1.5 years really has been developing people. And anytime someone comes to me now with a question and says, how do you want to handle this? Internally I go, do this. And then I say, you know what, Krista, I want you to not only think about how you would solve it, think about how I might solve it, and make some recommendations, and then we'll sit down and talk about it. And the more I've done that over the last 1.5 years, and in the last 1.5 years, there's no magical thing to that last 18 months. It's Dr. Mike really being able to run an entire clinic of 1,000 starts on 4 days a week, primarily by himself, with me just drinking coffee when I need to. And so I'm focusing on team. And it's amazing, like Jamie said, to turn the ship around. When you elevate leaders, then they start to lead. And we're doing our team reviews in September, and I had 6 out of 18 people that said, what's next? Like, I want to be a mentor to other people instead of this disparate level of knowledge between doctor and everybody else. We have so many people climbing up the ladder that they wanted to make a schedule change on how we scheduled our D-bands. And my office manager texted me today and said, I'm only letting you know so you know the schedule is changing, not that you need to make a decision. But we changed the schedule on how we do the D-bands because that's what we agree on. And I'm at a point where I said, great. Like, I know that's the best decision, and I could have spent hours figuring it out. So probably a moderately convoluted way to explain that I think people and investing time in the human beings, if we're hiring great people, just let them run and take your thumb off of everything and just, I'm not saying be an absent leader because you need to be involved. But really just let people be the exceptional human beings they are. And that's been the most rewarding part of my entire 20-something years of career. And so that's my take.
Awesome. So this one's from Dr. Bob Skopek. and he says, Jeff, I feel like I've implemented your mindset well into my one doctor, one practice or one location practice. I'm trying to scale this model into more doctors and more locations. It seems like more doctors plus more locations means you absolutely need more starts to maintain your bottom line, profitability, and happiness. How do you maintain profitability, et cetera, with multiple locations and multiple doctors and staff?
Ouch. There's so much in that. I think the first thing is when you're building to grow, you have to invest in CapEx and facilities, et cetera, which is going to minimize the bottom line on the growth of those businesses at the beginning. But I think ultimately, it comes down to team culture, systems, and you can't expect to, say, acquire a practice or open a de novo practice and have those practices do what your flagship did day one. So you probably need to set different benchmarks for each of those other opportunities as compared to your flagship practice. And I'm sorry for the delays because I'm on the phone and I can hear myself talking like 4 seconds after I talk.
No worries. This is more from Nicole Bradfield. How do you balance being clinically efficient with providing great service? The patients need those extra care appointments that aren't really needed, but they just need some attention, et cetera.
I'll just answer another question that was on the Q&A about who's a great scheduling consultant. Nicole Bradfield, the one who just answered that question. So that's actually who Koz and I use. She's a total rock star. As far as balancing the customer service, I mean, we're sort of take live bullets in the clinic, right? So there is no surefire answer for all of it. I would say one thing that we didn't do until we visited Koz's practice, which we do now, is invite the parents back into the back. We still do that with COVID. I personally think the incremental risk of having the parent sit by the foot of the chair of the patient is negligible from a COVID infection perspective relative to having the kid in there. I mean, they live together, the mom brought them, the riskiness for me isn't there. I think the business risk for not having them there and keeping them in the car for like a year at a time, even though it seems really easy to not have to talk to the parents, is actually snowballing into a big, hairy mess of super disgruntled and pissed off parents who feel out of touch and who've been locked in their basement for a year's time or grumpy about everything anyway. So I like to have the parents back and talk to them while I'm doing the appointment. And that like raises their level of connection that they feel with the office and the doctor. And it makes your customer service seem so much better than it is because they're in touch. They see you working with the patients. They see the way that you interact with them. And so I think a lot of the service that is done is actually just by chit-chatting with the parent while you're doing the adjustment anyway. It doesn't take any extra time. And there's a huge pearl I learned from Koz, and it really ups the level of service I think we give to the parents for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, basically, thank you for stealing my entire answer. But, I was surprised to see on a number of the Facebook orthodontic groups when COVID came out, the number of docs that said they were so thankful that they could now forbid parents from coming into the clinic made me want to vomit. I don't want to say we mandate it, but I would rather have every parent at the foot of the chair. And like Jamie said, you can communicate with them. They see you communicating effectively and compassionately with their child. They see you engaging with your team and running an efficient and effective business. They see your sterilization protocols and procedures. And so it's way less time than, sending an assistant out to the parking lot, or let's even pretend pre-COVID or when someday we get post-COVID. going to the reception room to, by the way, don't call it a waiting room, going to the reception room to talk to the parent about something, like have them in there, let them observe what's going on. So you're actually more efficient when you're telling your assistant what you're going to do. And then invariably, Jamie, you'll agree with this, parents go, was that Greek? We didn't get that. And I look at the kid and I say, did you get that? And they go, yeah. And you go, well, then you're hired. I need a new assistant anyway. And you can joke, you can chuckle about, well, that's our orthodontic talk. But in English, that means we're going to have Susie wear rubber bands to correct her overbite. And she's doing great with her brushing. And we're going to see you guys back in 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and stay healthy. And we appreciate you guys being here. And I think you can run a really efficient business that's high touch and high customer service. The only other thing I'll say is pick your spots. And so a lot of docs get bogged down by feeling the need to talk to everybody. If you can, if you've got a dad there, I'm saying dad because, it's who's on his phone doing this, right? Doing this, you're not going to like bust him out of his phone to try and engage him and high five and whatever. But at the same time, when my clinical coordinator says chair 753 and I come out of consult and the mom at chair 1 is going like this, looking at her watch, I go to chair 1 because mom's looking at her watch. And, so reading people and you don't have to talk to everybody all the time. Pick the ones that you think are the highest value. If the parents are there and they're engaged, then be engaging with them. And if they're disengaged, just give them a quick lowdown on what's going on and move on to the next chair.
The one thing I'll add to Koz is that, I think that, I know if I talk about sales or marketing, the first thing people think about is like, selling them something they don't need. And I think if you talk about efficiency, the first thing people think is cutting corners or not doing a good job clinically or whatever. And I think that, there is the ability by, like from an efficiency standpoint, watching people like you work. I've been to your office multiple times to see the way it is. It is possible to be efficient and give great customer service at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. You just have to think about giving great customer service efficiently. And so, what are the ways, where are you wasting time? I give an example. So before I went to your office, we had this thing called a stand-up consult, which is like a little room. Kaz, where they are in some of our offices. It's like a little room where we would put the parents when we want to talk to them. And they'd go in there and sit and wait. And then, so we'd be at the chair and then we'd have to go in and like grab the parents who are sitting there waiting for us and talk to them about brushing or whatever. And it basically, I did the adjustment and now I'm basically spending time again talking to the parents later about something I want to talk to them about. And it's just wasted time. So we got rid of the stand-up consult. We moved the doctor's office into there as like a perch. And now we do sort of our consults more frequently at the chair with the patients, and we're giving better service in less time. So I would say try to find the areas in your office where maybe there's redundancy, and then use those to sort of try to eliminate those and replace them with things that might be customer service feely, like inviting the parents back to the chair. So you can do both.
Awesome. Great stuff. Great stuff, guys. So this is kind of a two-part question for you here. Sometimes it's hard not to fall in the trap of dropping fees when a TC is with the patient and discounting, like Dr. Reynolds talked about during his presentation. How are you both able to get so many people to start same day, without having TCs kind of fall in the trap of dropping fees, or without being too pushy with the sales process? How are you able to be successful with not doing those things, but still being so successful with so many same day starts?
Well, I guess I'll start because I don't see Jamie on video. This is really his area of expertise, but it really comes from the very beginning, from the phone call. As Jamie mentions in his presentation, if the first time a patient hears about a same day start is from the doctor at the end of the consult, that's pushy. But if you're letting people know from the time they call that we care about your time, and if your child is ready to start treatment when they come in, we reserve time to be able to do that. It's already beginning to be less pushy. So I think the answer really is communication. When I sit down in an exam, most of my discussion is about, we're here about education and we're here about communication, and it takes a team to do that. So our treatment coordinators can communicate. Like, when you educate your team, our treatment coordinators come to us and say, yeah, I've got a new patient here. I think he's a 24-month herpes case. Like, it gets really easy to go in because they're already guiding them in the direction that they believe the doctor is going to go. So there's training involved in that, but I think ultimately it's really how the whole system works from the front end, from the new patient phone call to all of the contact they have between that call till they get in the office, and then culminates in the new patient exam. Where for most offices, it's, in fact, many offices aren't one-step consults. So the new patient exam is the information gathering appointment. And then there's a records appointment to gather more information. And then there's a consultation appointment to review all that information. And then we're maybe really happy if we get a same-day start on our third appointment at the consultation. I think a lot of those systems could be done earlier in the process. And now that Jamie's back on, I'll let him go because this is actually his area of expertise. Yeah, sorry, I had to fill up my wine.
Yeah, so hey, Brian, we did Koz has a number of Rockstar TCs. We do as well. One of, we've got, Melissa and Julie and Danielle and Emily and Colleen, and Danielle and I did a webinar for OrthoFI over the quarantine where we talked about expectation setting and scripting and stuff for same day starts. And so maybe you could link that in the notes or something, because it does answer all that stuff. Koz hinted at it. The way that you know that your process is not working right is when you're in the exam, if you mention same day start to the patient or the parent, they seem surprised. Because then for your TC to then get them to sign the contract and get their braces on that day automatically seems pushy to the parent because they're surprised at it. So if you mention same day, so if you want to know like the canary in the coal mine for your process, like mention getting started today in your exam, and if people seem surprised, your process is not good. So everything has to be done intentionally and proactively. So we call it proactive objection management and proactive value creation, right? So we know that there's a number of objections that patients have, financial insurance, need to talk to dad, whatever the case may be, that, we know that there's a certain number of them through tracking the data for OrthoFI. And each of our offices has different reasons why we're valuable, what the value that we provide to the patient, right? So you need to systematically build that value through your exam process and through your onboarding process from the phone call all the way through. And you need to manage the objections of the patients so that by the time you ask for money, all of the value has been created and all of the objections have been managed. And don't ask for money or a sale until all of that's done. So like if you avoid all of those things because you're like, hey, maybe if I don't talk about it, we won't have to talk about it. And then you say, hey, braces and $6,000. And the mom says, well, what about this? And then you try to explain away like why they might have an objection to that. That's very defensive. That plays defense, and then it gets people to like, and then if you try to explain, that seems pushy, right? Whereas if you do it ahead of time, you play offense, and you get everything out of the way, and you understand what they want, you understand what their concerns are, you kind of customize it for that person, and then you get all of that done, and then you ask for money. They're like, okay, I got it, let's do this, right? And so the difference between being pushy is proactively engaging in stuff versus asking for money and then defending your standpoint. So you want to play offense. You don't want to be offensive. You want to play offense versus playing defense. So, and we go through that in 90 minutes of detail in that one lecture if you want to link that up, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. We got it linked in the, we posted the link in the chat. So I know we're running obviously a little bit longer than we had anticipated. So we'll just ask a couple more real quick, and then anything we don't get to, we will absolutely follow up with anybody that submitted the questions. So we'll ask a few more here really quick, and then we'll do the raffle, and then we'll call it a night. So this is from Thomas Bowen. I'd be interested to hear more about Dr. Kozlowski's, have him discuss more about his phase 1 treatment without the use of expanders.
So that's a whole presentation in and of itself. And this isn't really a clinical presentation, but what I'll say is this. The general theory is passive self-ligation, bracketing upper and lower arches, including primary teeth, focusing on arch development, using coil springs as necessary to make space. And my contact is probably somewhere on here. Email me and I'll get you some pictures of it. I did a presentation, or look into the 2020, actually it was this year, 2020 forum before COVID shut everything down. I did an hour-and-a-half presentation on early treatment. So if you can find a way from your Ormco rep to get your hands on my 2020 forum presentation, that'll cover all that.
Awesome. And then Dr. Reynolds, are there any books that you would recommend for marketing?
Ask Savannah from my office, Jamie.
Ask Savannah from your office?
My office. Savannah, if you're on, there's a library right there that has about 130 marketing books. I don't know if you even knew it was there, so I love you, Sav. But Jamie.
I think there's a bunch of different sort of divisions of marketing that are good. There's a book called Authority Marketing by Adam Whitty and Rusty Shelton, which, those guys are spot on with their concept of authority marketing. I mentioned a little bit in my talk. And so I think every orthodontist should know the concept and the theory of authority marketing inside and out, because it works. We're doing some of it right now. And then anything by Jonah Berger, I think is really good. He's got some of like the theoretical brand-based stuff. And anything by Dan Kennedy, writes a million books, the No BS this and the No BS that, is really good.
I'll give you some.
From an orthodontist standpoint, there's a guy by the name of Dustin Burleson who may be a bit kind of in your face as far as how he markets himself and his consulting services, but I don't know that there's anybody in orthodontics that knows marketing better than him. And he's written a bunch of books. So I would read everything I can get my hands on from Dustin Burleson as well. I have.
And then a quick one for Koz, speaking of book recommendations, what was the book that you had talked about on donating time?
So to be clear, the book is not about donating time. That's a philosophy in our office. The book is called Culture Code.
That's the book of Koz.
That's the book of Koz. It's the Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, who became somewhat infamous because he was the author that was following Lance Armstrong during his Tour de France titles. Unbeknownst to him, they would all be stripped. Nonetheless, the Culture Code really talks about, and I'm actually going to mention this one point, but it will be in our follow-up webinar. It's about, creating a shared sense of value with your team, and then being able to be vulnerable. And I think that's probably the hardest thing, for the orthodontists that are on this. We've had to be tough to get through college and dental school and ortho school. And I know everyone thinks being an orthodontist is pretty easy, and some parts of it are. But the vulnerability and like having your team know you're human, and that that you have, think about for many of us as male docs, we have female employees, and and their husbands and significant others go through stuff that all of us as human beings go through. So for them to know that you've had a hard day, or that you've got something going on with your family, or that you're struggling with something, or that you're insecure giving lectures. Gosh, Jamie, who knew that you or I could be insecure giving presentations? Those kinds of things, that vulnerability to your team really, personally, I think vulnerability is the number one superpower a leader can have. Because if you are vulnerable as a leader and willing to share of yourself, then your team will march through the gnarliest stuff in the world to support you, because they know you're human. And many of us try to pass off this superhuman persona, and we are in many ways, but we all have our own challenges. And so the book is not about donating time. Jamie said that's the book of Koz. And just here's my tip on that. You want to solve your donating time problem? Give every employee, primarily clinical, in your office a stopwatch. And for 1 month, have them start the stopwatch every time they can't do something because they don't have what they need, whether it be an instrument or supplies or a doctor, and then stop it. And I guarantee you'll find that every one of your clinical people is wasting somewhere between 1 and 2 hours a day on stopped time. That's why we called it red light. So if you want to learn the donating time, if someone's on stop time, then get your butt out of the chair and find something to do. Turn a chair, sterilize instruments, type a chart, help somebody out. I don't know, go over and give someone a high five, or give someone a hug, or make someone's day, or tell your 8-year-old patient how beautiful her hair bow is. Like, it doesn't matter. Find a way to make your practice better during that stop time. That's all the book you need right there.
Perfect. 2 last questions here for you. This was, kind of about what Koz talked about, but I think either one of you could probably answer this. So you alluded to liking how, one of the benefits of OrthoFI is you like how it helped, help patients pay for, or help you convert more aligner cases by not, having to offset or pass down the cost and ask patients to put more down to cover lab fees. Could you just explain that a bit more, your point there?
Jamie, I'm guessing that's in your second follow-up presentation, correct?
Yeah. The numbers, at least the gist of it, is that so you want to look at your, so I think as orthodontists, I'm trying to keep this relatively short. As orthodontists, we live in our own little world, and most of us have our 1 or 2 or whatever offices in our team, and then everything is like sort of locked inside of that little world, and so we don't go outside of that to ask for help or do whatever, and so we tend to reinvent the wheel a lot. There are things called banks and financial institutions that have actually figured out like how to lend money to people appropriately and how to finance both accounts receivable and contracts receivable, which is what we do. And so what they don't do is they don't approach every single transaction on an individual basis. They look at each one individually, but they set the risk parameters on a global perspective, and they make sure that all of the transactions inside of their book of business stay within their risk parameters. And it sort of creates a broader book of business. So you have, sort of little transactional pieces that fit all within the broader book. And so I think as orthodontists, we tend to focus on each transaction individually versus thinking about how, you actually make money in the long run, which is like do orthodontics in your practice. And so what I would say is, flexibility is the key in understanding to treat things more like a banker would than look at each transaction individually. And we'll get into the detail of that next time with graphs and charts and all that stuff for sure.
Perfect. And one more for both of you before we'll announce the winner of we'll announce through the raffle and kind of wrap up here. So Jamie, I'll ask you first here, I guess, in the spirit of New Year's resolutions and, everybody kind of setting goals on things that they can or they won't achieve this year for the next year. But if a practice owner, came to you and asked for your opinion and they wanted to know, they were going to come up with one New Year's resolution that would transform their business, and one of them, and one that it's that they can do, right? One that they can actually achieve. What would you recommend it should be?
Honestly, I think if 90% of ortho practices would just set quarterly goals, quarterly, semi-annually, and annual goals, and then follow up on them, right? And so let's say you picked 3 goals for your quarter that you wanted to do, and sort of 5 goals for the year, and then look at those and kind of break them down in the component parts, like, hey, and keep it, smaller, like, hey, don't say I want to grow to be, triple in size, right? Like 10% to 20% growth. Pick a few things and back them down, keep it small, make a business plan, read that 12-week yearbook that I put up in my presentation by the Sparty. But it's a great book. Like, business planning, goal setting, and following up on it is what most of us don't do. And that's actually the key to actually doing it. So I think most of us show up to work and we say, hey, we want to do however many starts today, or we want to grow by whatever. We just want to grow. And there's no really direction or plan in place. There's no metrics. There's no measuring. There's no anything. It's just every day kind of showing up and waiting for it to happen, versus making a plan, distilling the component parts, and then following up on it on a weekly basis. That's what you need to do to grow, And so I think there's the people that are doing that are the ones that are crushing it, in my opinion.
So I'm going to piggyback off that and say, I agree completely with that, but you can't do that without people. And so if it were me, and maybe because I've got a little bit of salt in my paprika here.
Yeah, it's not fair because I can't grow a beard. So,
but for me, where I am now, the focus is on, and it's been amazing. Like I said, the last year and a half of focusing on developing leaders has really surprised me at how fast people can become leaders. I think, we have profitable but relatively small businesses, business speaking. And so we tend to underestimate what our team members can contribute. And when we let off the reins of control, and I don't mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mean no oversight on the business, but I mean, when you give people the opportunity to start to help you make decisions in your business, you will see how that can grow exponentially. Because my hope is that we all didn't hire a bunch of slackers. And I now have, I think about my practice over the years, and I now have 8 or 9 people that could be office managers. And they're running different parts of whatever else is going on in the business. And we've developed systems. Okay, so don't come to me and tell me what you think you want to do. Email the leadership team of 8 people of what you think and what the problem is, how you want to solve it, what options there are, and what you think it's going to benefit. And the amount of amazing transformation we've had in growth, human growth, development of skills, intellectual capacity, engagement in the office. How many of you have team members that are just disengaged from what you're doing? And look, we all have a couple of those at any point in time, but I've got 80 or 90% of my practice, my team actively engaged in figuring out how to make it better, figuring out how to make me do less. Like, that's the backwards of what it used to be. It's like, oh, the doctor makes all the money, we're just going to let him do all the stuff. And it's really empowering all the way around. And it's allowed me to grow more in my goal of mentorship over just doing stuff every day. And so I would take what Jamie said, build a plan, but engage your team in that plan and work hard to develop them as their individual leaders, and coach, and just be there for them. Yeah. And that's what you do when you're clinically efficient and you see patients 3 days a week. You know, yes, we have hobbies, but spend some other time with them. Actually help grow them up. And that was probably a longer way of saying develop your team.
No, I totally agree. And just to build a little bit on that, you know, I mentioned some of the talk is do a really thorough, accurate self-assessment of who you are as a leader and what your strengths and challenges are, number one. And then, you know, I think there's two types of disgruntled employees that are out there. There's the ones that, you know, are just a challenge all the time. And then there are ones that your leadership is directly responsible for the way that they're unhappy at work. Right. Yep. And so I would look around and find all the places where your thumb is right on top of their head that's keeping them from standing up straight and expressing themselves the way that they are, and try to remove your thumb from those circumstances and see what you actually have for people. And my impression was, because I've learned this is my evolution of a leader. When I was younger, I was less impressed with my team than I am now. And the difference is that I empowered them to be who they are capable of being versus trying to make me do whatever and have them follow. Right. Yeah. Epiphany. Right. And so figure out who you are and try to really look in the mirror and figure out where you're actually in the way of the development of your team and the people that are disgruntled. You know, where could it be your fault? And keep Koz's words of wisdom in your mind. And then once you identify that, then let them go, and your practice will be better for it.
This is great. Love that advice. I want to thank you both so much for really sticking around late tonight and doing this with us. You know, this has been a lot of great, great presentation, great materials. I think some really great takeaways for everybody. So, we're going to get wrapped up here. If there's any questions that come in, if there's anything that you think of, please just email us and we'll be happy to do it. So, with that, our winner of the phone soap is Dr. Brian Bowlerjack of Lakeway Orthodontics. So we'll be following up with him as well, to get that out to you. And, like I said, thank you for everybody. Thank you all for clients. If you're interested in learning more about how OrthoFI can help, like I said, we'd love to set up some time with you. It's a great time right now. We're running a lot of great new customer promos, and you can get a chance to win $500. So again, on behalf of everybody from OrthoFI, everybody that was here tonight, thank you to Dr. Reynolds. Thank you, Dr. Kozlowski, as well. I appreciate all your.
Ryan, if I could jump in one more before we go. I know, especially mine, but even some of what Koz was a bit philosophical this evening, and wasn't as much, ABC 1, 2, 3. We normally do this in a day course where the afternoon is very much, okay, now we built the foundation of the mindset, here's how you do it. So stay tuned for, the early part of next year when we'll come back and we'll actually be a lot more, hey, here's the things that you can take and do in your office on Monday. But we really believe that you have to get the mindset right before you can build on the other things. So if you tuned into this and this wasn't quite as recipe generating as you had hoped it was, then we'll give that to you next time.
Love it. Yeah, well, more to come on that. So like I said, we'll be sending out some recordings and things like that. Again, thank you guys so much. If any of you have any questions, you can learn more at startmoresmiles.com. You can give us a call directly, or you can also shoot us an email, and we will be happy to get back to you as soon as we can. So on behalf of all of us, like I said, thank you so much. And thank you to our amazing speakers. We appreciate you guys helping make this a great event for us. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
All right, thanks, y'all.
Much mistletoe. It's the most wonderful time of the year, with the kids jingle belling and everyone telling you be of good cheer. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's the happiest season of all, with those holiday greetings and gay happy meetings when friends come to call. It's the happiest season of all. There'll be parties for hosting, marshmallows for toasting, and caroling out in the snow. There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. It's the most wonderful time of the year. There'll be much mistletoeing and hearts will be glowing.